Kiss of the assassin. Rain slid off the umbrella's edge and tapped a rhythm on Arya's knuckles. The graves were two dark mouths in the earth, and the coffins went down slow, like the ground needed time to make up its mind. People murmured prayers. A woman sobbed into her gloves. Arya stood so still her body ached. Her mother should have had peonies. There were only lilies and red roses. Too loud for a day like this. Arya stared at them until her eyes burned. She would not cry here. Not in front of neighbors who had watched her family like a show. Not in front of men who measured grief the way they measured risk. Arya. The voice slid through the rain, even in quiet. She turned. Marco Moretti didn't bother with an umbrella. Drops clung to his dark hair and the shoulders of his suit, and still he looked untouched, like the weather knew to keep its distance. People pulled back when he moved, making space the way water yields to a ship's wake. He wasn't big in the way of bodyguards, but something about him filled the space anyway. "Do you need a minute?" he asked. "No? Then come." He offered his hand. She hesitated. Then she put her fingers in his, and he walked her to the edge. The coffins hung a foot above the clay. She knelt and touched the slick wood, fingertips shaking. The pendant at her throat pressed into her collarbone, a small hard truth beneath the thin black dress. She curled her hand around it. "Goodbye," she whispered, and the rain took the word like a messenger. The first shovelful of soil hit the lid with a flat final sound. She stood and stepped back beside Marco. He didn't say anything. He didn't put an arm around her. He just stood like a wall beside a wall and let the world slide off both of them. In the car, the heat was too high and made her feel faint. The driver watched her in the mirror, then looked away fast. Marco waited for the gates to close behind them before he spoke. "You didn't cry?" "Not here." "Because you're strong or because you're angry?" "Both. Both will serve you if you learn where to point them." "I know where to point them," she said. She pressed the pendant harder into her palm until the edge bit her skin. "Romano." Marco's eyes stayed on the road ahead. "Say it again." "Romano." He nodded once. "Then we're starting from the same place." She swallowed. "He sent them after us. He sent them to the alley." Marco's jaw flexed. "He sent men who follow orders. They did what they were told." "Then I'll find the ones who gave the orders and the ones who followed them," she said. "I'll put all of them in the ground. Words are cheap, we will make yours expensive." She watched the olive trees blur past, silver leaves flashing in the rain. Her father's last moments replayed in vicious loops. The slick cobbles, the slammed van door, the way he had grabbed her wrist and yanked her behind the trash bins. "Guard this with your life, Tesoro," he had said, pressing the chain into her hand. "It will take you where I can't." She'd tried to shove it back at him. He'd closed her fingers over it and kissed her forehead. Run to Marco. Then he'd run toward the men instead of away from them. In the villa's entryway, servants tried not to stare. The air smelled like lemon oil and old stone. Marco led her down the hall to a small room with a table, a safe, and nothing soft. "Take it out," he said. She slid the chain over her head. The pendant lay heavy and cool in her palm. There was a barely visible seam along one edge. She dug a nail into the notch, eased it open, and lifted the narrow USB from its hiding place. The sight of it made her chest feel both hollow and full. Marco opened the safe with his thumbprint and set a velvet tray on the table. Arya put the drive down like it was a sleeping animal. The safe swallowed it with a soft click. "That belongs to you," he said. "But you don't touch it until you're ready." "What's on it?" "Everything that burns him, names, accounts, photos that end careers, a trail even his lawyers can't wash." He shut the safe. The lock engaged with a sound she felt in her teeth. "Fire spreads. We don't spark it until we've closed all the doors." "I don't want to wait." "That's the last time you say that," Marco said. "You'll wait, you'll learn, and you'll do it right the first time." "Teach me." "You'll obey," he said. "I will." He watched her long enough to be sure, then tapped a small black band onto the table. Wear it. 2 buzzes. Go to the panic room. 4. You get in the car and run. You ignore it. I put you on a plane so fast you think you dreamed me. You can try. One of his eyebrows lifted. Good. Keep that spine. But point it the right way. He took her downstairs. The training room stretched under the villa like a second house. Mats, mirrors, racks of blades and guns. A human-shaped dummy with a taped X over the heart. A woman waited by the mats. Compact, balanced, hair tied back, eyes calm. Ava, Marco said. My niece, Arya. I'm sorry for your loss, Ava said. There was no script in her voice. Change your shoes. By the time the rain stopped, Arya's muscles were on fire. Eva showed her how to break a wrist grab without using strength, how to turn a fall into a launch, how to find someone's balance, and take it. When Arya hesitated, Eva's voice cut through. Again. Arya did it again. The mat smelled like salt and rubber. Her breath rasped, but steadied. Every clean movement gave her back a piece of herself. She ate at the long kitchen table and barely tasted anything. She slept like a dropped stone and woke before dawn. She went back to the mats. The routine kept the edges from coming apart. On the 8th day, Marco took her to the firing range. He handed her hearing protection and a pistol that looked almost polite. Guns come last, he said, but not never. Grip. She adjusted. Elbows. She adjusted. Breathe. She exhaled and the sound bounced off the concrete. Now. The first shot tore the air. The recoil snapped her wrists. The hole landed just left of center. Again, he said. She fired until her hands trembled. He didn't praise. He didn't scold. He corrected, short and precise as a tap of a pen. When she leaned, he said, shoulders. When she rushed, he said, patience. When she flinched, he said nothing and waited for her to correct herself. After, she leaned against the cool wall while the smell of powder faded. There will be a moment when you can still turn back, Marco said. If you want it, I'll make the small life happen for you. New name, soft house, dog by the door. Is that what you wish I wanted? I don't wish. I prepare. He looked at her. Do you want it? No, she said. I want balance. A wait for a wait. Then you'll need more than hate, he said. You'll need focus. I have it. We'll see. Days turned into a quiet grind. The driver with the scar showed her how to feel a tale by the rhythm of a street. The cook with hands like bread taught her how to blend a poison that mimicked a bad heart. A tailor measured her and measured again, fingers light on her shoulders. A man who treated fabric and bodies with the same care. Carlo, a fixer with a forgettable face, brought a velvet box with earrings that looked like diamonds and were really devices. I don't wear earrings, she said. You do now, Marco answered. Say thank you. Thank you, she told Carlo. He grinned. I'm unavoidable. You'll see. Eva took her to Rome and made her sit in cafes and watch men in suits fail at being invisible. Arya learned to pay attention to small lies. A courier who checked his watch too often. A boss who passed a glass with his left hand today and his right hand tomorrow. Patterns were doors and she collected keys. Back at the villa, Marco spread a folder across his desk. Photographs, dates, addresses, the plain facts of rotten lives. Names, he said. Salvatore Romano, she said first. Say it again. Salvatore Romano. Marco nodded. And his lieutenant in New York. Vincenzo Ricci, she said, reading the face under the name. Wide mouth, thin eyes, a scar on his cheek that made him look like he was always smirking. He runs the gala scene, charity dinners, art buyers who want to wash money. You will meet him before you meet Romano, Marco said. He'll think he's the spider. He's just a fly with better shoes. Arya turned a page. Another face, another address. She took them into her head and closed the door behind them. Do we have any allies? She asked. Temporary ones, Marco said. People who want Romano hurt for their own reasons. And the police. Useful when they want to be. He paused. There is one detective in New York who is not stupid. Ethan Hale. Arya lifted a brow. You know his name. I know all the names, he said. He's clean. He's stubborn. He has a sense of the rot he's walking on. And he still walks. Her mouth edged up without humor. Sounds annoying. It will be, Marco said. He'll also be a problem if you treat him like an amateur. How do I treat him? Like a man who can ruin you if you get sloppy, Marco said. And like a man who might unexpectedly do the right thing if you give him the chance. Useful when I want him to be, she said. Now you're listening. That night she stood on the balcony, the city far away like a smear of gold. The pendant lay in her palm. She opened it and touched the drive with the tip of her finger. A small, hard future pressed back. Guard this with your life, Tesoro. I am, she said into the dark. And I will use it when it matters. She went to the cemetery alone at dawn before she left. The grass wet her shoes. Someone had left lilies again. She moved them aside and placed peonies she'd cut from a neighbor's garden, a small theft that felt right. I'm going, she told the earth. I'll come back when it's done. A breeze moved the cypress branches. It sounded like a reply. When she returned to the villa, a passport waited by her coffee. The photo looked like her, and not like her. The name said, Elena Marquez. Art dealer, Marco said. You deal in beauty and provenance. You'll fit right in. And you, she asked. Nearby and nowhere, he said. You'll have what you need when you need it. Don't mistake that for a safety net. I won't. He studied her. Say it again, what do you want? Balance, she said. Their lives for my parents, Romano last. He held out his hand. She took it. His grip was firm, not gentle. It felt like putting ink on a contract. Guard this with your life, he said. He wasn't talking about the necklace anymore, she nodded. At dinner, the television in the kitchen played a New York news segment. A slick anchor sat beside a photo of Romano smiling at a ribbon cutting. The chyron crawled with talk of a task force. Then they cut to a short clip of Detective Ethan Hale outside a courthouse. He wore a suit that looked used to his body and a face that didn't perform for cameras. We'll keep pushing, Ethan said. No one is untouchable. The cook snorted. He's handsome, she said, and doomed. Arya watched the screen so long the anchor moved on to a traffic accident and a dog that saved a child. She didn't realize she was still staring until the cook shut it off. He'll be in the way, Marco said from the doorway. Then I'll step around him, Arya said, and do it clean. The flight left in the morning. Arya slept for a few hours, woke to air and cloud and the tin rattle of a drinks cart. She checked the pendant by touch. Still there. Still cold. She opened the passport to Elena Marquez and practiced the new name in her head until it didn't feel like a costume. It felt like a tool. At customs, the officer stamped her book without interest. Outside, the line of yellow cabs looked like a row of teeth. The air tasted different. The energy here didn't hum. It pressed. She let it press. She pressed back. In the back seat, while the driver cursed at a truck and honked, she watched the city roll by in steel and glass and brick. Somewhere inside this maze was a man who'd sent other men into an alley and stolen every soft thing from a girl with peonies in her hands. Somewhere else was the detective who had said no one was untouchable as if he believed it. Her phone buzzed once, a message from a number she didn't have saved. Welcome to New York. Check your email. M. In the email sat a schedule, a guest list, and a name in bold, Vincenzo Ricci. Arya touched the locket, then let her hand fall to her lap. She rested her head back and closed her eyes, not to sleep, but to listen to the engine, the city, and the steady, patient beat of her own heart. I'll kill them all, she said softly, and the car's noise swallowed the promise and carried it forward. The elevator doors opened to a wash of light, strings, and laughter that sounded just a shade too eager. A gallery had been transformed into a gala, and the room knew it. Chandeliers scattered gold across marble. Tall arrangements of white lilies and roses climbed from mirrored pedestals, scenting the air with soft sweetness that could not quite cover the smell of money and nerves. Waiters drifted with trays that flashed like small moons. The hum of rich conversation rose and fell in smooth waves. Arya moved through it as if she had always belonged. Elena Marcus wore a black silk dress that moved when she did, a whisper against her skin. The diamond bracelet on her wrist was a thin line of light. Nothing ostentatious. The pendant lay quiet against her sternum, the chain cold before the crowd warmed it. She smiled when she was supposed to, and never too wide. Her stride said confident, not hungry. She had rehearsed until it was muscle, not thought. She could feel eyes slide over her. Some landed and lingered, some dismissed. The trick was to make both reactions useful. Vincenzo Ricci was not hard to find. Laughter always marked him. Not joyful laughter, but the loud performance of a man who wanted attention to think it was earned, not demanded. He stood near a marble column in a ring of men, who nodded for a living, his hand heavy on the back of a young woman's chair. The scar under his cheekbone caught the light when he turned his head. His suit fit like a promise he had no intention of keeping. Arya did not look at him. She let her attention slide past him like a beam of light that had missed by an inch. She crossed to the bar. The bartender placed a flute of champagne on a napkin. Before she asked, she lifted it and let bubbles kiss her lip without taking a real sip. She traced the edge of the bracelet with her thumb, casual, like a woman enjoying her jewelry. The capsule behind one of the links sat snug and silent, no larger than a pepper grain. The poison inside would not strike until later. A clean exit required patience. She saw him before he saw her. Tall, broad shoulders under a navy suit that did not try to impress. Dark hair trimmed close. A face that looked like it had been taught to carry tiredness without complaint. His mouth was set in a line that softened only when he spoke to someone who needed gentleness. Detective Ethan Hale. Marco had shown her his file, the headlines, the footage from a courthouse step. The ink of one particular honor blade still clung to his name. Her eyes brushed his face for the span of a breath, then moved on. He registered. Awareness rolled through her body the way a chord rolls through a piano. It landed somewhere low, not entirely comfortable. She ignored it. A voice warmed the air beside her elbow. Elena Marcus. I'm offended no one introduced us sooner. She turned just enough to give Ricci her profile. She met his eyes after 2 full beats. I have been told you are hard to miss, Mr. Ricci. He smiled, pleased to be a rumor. Then whoever told you that has taste. Some would call it caution. I don't hire cautious people, he said. I hire useful ones. Lucky me, she murmured, and let her smile lift a fraction higher. He gestured to a waiter who produced 2 fresh glasses. Ricci handed one to her and held the other. He didn't drink yet. He enjoyed the look of it, the ritual of holding something other people wanted. What does an acquisitions broker acquire? He asked. Whatever is missing, she said. For a fee. For discretion. Same thing most nights. He tipped his glass toward her. To discretion. The glasses touched with a light tap. She let champagne touch her mouth and not her throat. What brings you to New York, he asked, aside from my charming invitations. Clients, she said, tempting collections, bad taste that needs upgrading, the usual. I can put you in touch with men who have more money than taste, he said. It is a pity to see good money waste itself on mediocrity. You would be doing the city a service, she said. So would you. He glanced at her bracelet. That's a delicate piece. A gift, she said. From a man who understands you. She let the silence do the work of a coy laugh. His eyes warmed. He liked to imagine narratives that put him at the center. Movement at the edge of her vision. Ethan Hale. Closer now, a glass of club soda in his hand. He did not pretend to be part of the glitter. He wore the room like a suit he had to put on to get the job done. He stopped a few feet away, the kind of distance a cop leaves when he wants to force you to notice him without being rude. Ricci saw him and pasted on a grin. "Detective, you made it. I was beginning to worry you were avoiding me." "I prefer you worried," Ethan said. "Your people always show up when there are cameras," Ricci said. "Do you bring your own, or do they follow the badge?" "I bring a warrant when I need one," Ethan said. He didn't look at Ricci when he said it, he looked at Arya. Ricci's grin sharpened. "This is Elena Marcus, detective. She deals in art. The real kind, not paperwork. Elena, this is Ethan Hale. He deals in facts when they cooperate and stories when they don't." Ethan nodded once. "I haven't seen your name before, Miss Marquez." "My clients like it that way." "Who are your clients?" "My clients like it that way." "Who are your clients?" "Private men with good walls," she said, "and women who know how to choose." "New in town," he said. "Tonight I am," she said. "Tomorrow I might not be. It depends on the walls." Ricci laughed, delighted. "You see why I like her?" Ethan's gaze moved over Arya's face, her hands, the relaxed set of her shoulders, the thin weight of the bracelet. "I do," he said quietly. She tilted her head a degree. "Do you enjoy these events, detective?" "I enjoy endings," he said. "Happy ones. Clean ones. Those are rare," she said. "That's why I enjoy them." A shout of greeting pulled Ricci away. He was claimed by a trio of donors with the kind of confidence only inherited money grows. He glanced back at Arya. "Don't go far. I have a proposition." "Save it," she said softly. "For later," he said and winked. He turned to his new audience. Arya and Ethan were left with the space between them thickening by the second. Music rose behind the talk. A young violinist in a black dress played with her eyes closed, bow arm slicing the air in lines of discipline. "You weren't on the list," Ethan said low. "You memorized it," she said. "I wrote it." "That is very thorough of you. It keeps the room cleaner." "I thought you liked clean endings, not clean rooms." "Both help me sleep," he said. "Inti donkey, marder." "Then I'm sorry to ruin your night." "You think you will. You wouldn't be talking to me if you thought I wouldn't." He didn't smile, but something in his expression loosened, like a knot accepting it might one day be untied. "What brings you to Ricci?" "Art," she said. "Which kind?" "The kind he can show without getting arrested." "So, not most of his collection." She looked past him toward a painting that hung alone at the far end of the gallery. "I could make suggestions." "I bet you could," he said. "Here's mine. Don't leave early." "Why?" "Because people who leave early don't like their names on paperwork." "And you want mine on yours." "I want to be right," he said. "That is harder to acquire than art." "I'm aware." He took a breath, then stepped back, making space for the social swirl to reclaim the edges of the moment. A server passed between them. He didn't move to stop her. He said almost gently, "Be careful." It took an effort not to look at him too long. She gave him a nod, like a woman accepting attention as her due. He let her go. She let the room turn her. A woman in a green silk dress stepped into her path, smiling like they were old friends. The woman's hair was glossy and her eyes measured value quickly. "I adore your bracelet," she said. "Thank you," Arya said. "Where did you get it?" "A man with good taste," Arya said. "Introduce me to him." The woman laughed. "I'm Nadia. I curate things for men like Ricci. He thinks he chooses art. I let him keep the illusion." Arya liked her on instinct. "Then we might be competing or collaborating soon." "Let's collaborate," Nadia said. "Competing is dull." She lowered her voice. "I know a collector whose money has questions attached. He wants to buy answers disguised as paintings." "Send me his name," Arya said. "I can answer a few questions in oil." Nadia's smile sharpened. "I knew I liked you. I will text you. Ricci is about to make one of his speeches. He loves the sound of his own declarations. He did. A man handed him a microphone. Ricci's voice rolled over the room as if the acoustics belonged to him. He thanked donors, praised a community program he had funded that washed streets and consciences, and promised to continue supporting the arts. Cameras craned. Applause came on cue. While the room watched him, Arya watched his glass. He had set it down on a side table near his elbow. He had taken 2 sips, then gestured too widely with his free hand. The glass had left a faint ring. She stepped behind a column, turned her back to the crowd as if to take a private call, and clicked the bracelet link open with a motion smaller than a blink. The capsule, tipped between finger and thumb, nestled against her skin. She crossed the room while the applause swelled. She reached the table as people rose for a toast. She set down her own glass with a light clink, her body turning in the kind of motion that reads as dancer, not threat. Her other hand brushed the rim of Ricci's flute. The capsule fell and dissolved without ceremony. She did not count. Counting makes hands clumsy. She picked up her own drink, lifted it with the room, and smiled like a person who enjoyed social performances. Ricci drank, pleased to be the center of a circle again. She drifted away past a bronze sculpture, toward a line of photographs that pretended to be gritty. She felt the air shift. It was small. It came from behind her. She didn't turn. Nadia reappeared. There you are. The room just improved by 20%. You are efficient, Arya said. I texted you the name, Nadia said. You will like him. He pays quickly. Your friend is looking at you again. I don't have friends here. The detective, Nadia said. He has the eyes of someone who likes puzzles, and he looks like he sleeps 3 hours a night. Maybe he enjoys the city too much. He doesn't look like he enjoys anything too much, Nadia said, except being right. Arya followed the line of the photographs the way a person follows art. She let the camera catch her in profile. She let the angle flatter and deflect. She felt Ethan's line of sight slide along her shoulder like a cool line of rain and settle there. He did not approach. He was patient. It made him more dangerous than Ricci's men, who mistook noise for power, a shadow at her side. She didn't need to look to know who it was. Ricci smelled like expensive aftershave and pride. He lowered his voice, as if conspiracy made him interesting. I have 2 paintings with questions attached, he said. One from the war, one from a private estate that is not quite as private as it used to be. I need someone to help me answer those questions without creating new ones. Provenance and presentation, she said. I can do both. I thought you could, he said. Come to my office in the morning. 10. We can talk about 5%. 10, she said. He laughed as if she had made a joke. You'll like me. I'm generous when I'm happy. I only work with generous men, she said, and let him believe it was about money. He touched her elbow in a way meant to feel proprietary. She shifted just enough that his fingers found air. He didn't notice he had missed. He moved on to greet a senator who had 3 chins and no shame. Arya checked the time without looking at her watch. Her body kept a clock better than any device now. The poison would begin to whisper around midnight and speak at 3. He would fall asleep and keep falling. She felt a presence before she saw him. Ethan again. He stood by the balcony doors, half in the light and half out, like a man who did not mind straddling thresholds. He moved his gaze across the room and landed on her with the kind of gentleness that hides bite. Then he lifted his glass in a gesture that might have been hello or warning. Arya set her glass on a tray and walked toward the side corridor that led to a small gallery of donors' names. The corridor was less crowded, quieter, the music a hum rather than a current. The air was cooler. She let her breath slow. Going somewhere, Ethan said from behind her. She didn't jump. She turned only her head. I enjoy reading plaques. Is that a crime? Only if you steal them. I prefer things that are harder to hang. He came to stand beside her, not blocking her path. Up close, the tiredness in his face made him somehow more human. He had the kind of steadiness she recognized from people who had been disappointed by their ideals and kept them anyway. "You enjoy this," he said. "The art. The game." She considered. "I enjoy being very good at something in a room full of people who think they are." "And what are you good at?" "Acquisitions." "Of what?" he said. "Leverage, she said. He huffed something very close to a laugh. "At least that's honest. I prefer honest lies to comforting ones." "Me too," he said. They stood in silence long enough to hear the violinist start a new song. The corridor lights painted his jaw in clean lines. She saw the small scar near his hairline. A past fight or a childhood accident? The file had said nothing about it. Files never catch everything. "You weren't on the list," he said, softer. "You said that already." "I didn't ask how you got in." "Through a door," she said. "Too simple," he said. "You used another guest's name, or you made yourself a +1 that no one would question." "Why does it matter?" "Because I like to know what I missed," he said. "And because if you can get in here, you can get into places people think are safer than they are." She let him see the smallest sliver of truth. "You're not wrong." "Do you know what Ricci is?" he asked. "A man with a scar and a sense of entitlement," she said. "He is also a fuse," Ethan said. "You light him. Things go off in other rooms. People get hurt who didn't ask to be part of any of it. You care about those people." "I do. Maybe you should keep them out of rooms like this then." "I try," he said. "It helps when the fire doesn't get started." She met his eyes. "If you could end a fire now at the cost of allowing a bigger one later, would you do it?" "That's a trick question." "It's a real one." "I don't trade lives," he said. "You do," she said gently. "You just prefer to pretend you don't." His jaw tightened and then relaxed. "You think you're the only one who has made a promise." "I know I'm the only one who can keep mine tonight," she said. "What is it?" "Later," she said. "When I'm finished. I'll give you everything you need. That's a promise, but not before." He took that in without blinking. "You're asking me to trust you." "I'm asking you to let me finish what started a long time ago," she said. "If you get in the way, you'll make a mess I'll have to clean up." "That sounds like a threat." "It's a fact," she said, and his eyes stayed on hers. "You're going to get yourself killed." "Probably," she said, "but not tonight." "Give me your real name," he said. "You first." He didn't look away. "Ethan." She smiled. "I know." "Your turn." "Not tonight," she said again. "But you'll get it, along with the rest." He stepped aside, giving her the corridor again. "If I don't stop you now, I'm complicit. If you stop me now, you're responsible for what happens instead. Choose wisely." He ran a hand along his jaw, not to groom, but the way a person touches their face when they are calibrating the weight of a decision. He looked toward the room where Ricci held court. He looked back at Arya. "You have 1 hour," he said. "That's generous." "It's reckless," he said. "Don't make me regret it." "You'll regret other things," she said, "not this." "Where will you be in an hour?" "Gone," she said. He shook his head once, like a man who knew he had just agreed to something he would not be able to explain later. Then he turned and walked back toward the light. He did not look over his shoulder. Arya let out a breath she had held since the first moment their eyes had locked. He was a problem for later. For now, she had to make sure the room did not have a memory of her that would matter. She circled past the bar again. She let a camera catch the angle of her smile with 2 other guests to prove she had been social and present. She chatted with a couple about a painting that wanted to be a confession and was only a mirror. She touched nothing that would betray fingerprints. She kept the bracelet fastened and the poison asleep where the empty capsule had once been. Her phone hummed in her clutch. A message from Marco. Exit the north stairwell. 2 cameras down for 5 minutes. She did not look around for who had made that possible. She moved her body to the rhythm of the room, then peeled off into the stairwell as if adjusting a heel. The concrete steps were cool underfoot through thin soles. The hum of the party dropped to a distant thrum. She walked down 2 flights, paused at a landing, and listened. A door opened below. Voices. She waited until they passed, then continued. On the service level, a hallway stretched toward a loading dock. A guard at a desk looked up from his phone and did not register her as a threat. It was amazing what a dress and a confident walk could do to a man's sense of risk. "Miss, that's for staff," he said, not moving. "I am staff," she said, and kept walking. He blinked, looked back at his phone, and let her pass. She stepped into the chill of the loading dock, the cold air a shock after the heat of the room. The driver with the scar waited with the car door already open. "Nice and quiet," he said, "and always," she said. They pulled out into the alley and onto a side street. The city at night felt like a long-held breath. She watched the reflections of neon and street lamps run along the car's glossy hood like paint. She did not look back. Looking back was for grief and amateurs. Back at the hotel, she peeled the dress off and hung it carefully. She placed the bracelet on the nightstand, the pendant beside it, like a shrine to 2 different kinds of promise. She scrubbed off makeup until her face felt like skin again, not a roll. Her phone buzzed. Eva's message, short and clean. "Camera's clear. Your cop didn't follow. Yet." Arya lay back against cool sheets and stared at the ceiling. She listened to the city talk. She set an alarm for 3, then closed her eyes and let sleep come in short, efficient increments, the way it had learned to since the alley. When the alarm trilled quietly, she answered it without a start. She sat up and checked her phone. Another message from the encrypted number. "Reachy down. Found at home. Preliminary call, heart failure. No heat on you." She didn't smile. She didn't feel triumph. She felt the steady, necessary shift of a gear moving 1 click closer to the position that would let the whole machine turn. She rose, made coffee, and watched steam climb like a thin ghost. Her mind went to Ethan without permission. The steadiness of his eyes, the ground in his voice when he said, "Be careful." He had given her an hour, as if that meant anything in a city that counted time in sirens and stock tickers. He had been right to warn himself. He had been wrong to think warning would change her. Her phone buzzed again. "Marco." "Good. Romano will tighten his circle. That's what we want. You have a meeting at noon with a gallery that cleans money with charm. Dressed to be underestimated." She typed back. "Always." She took another sip of coffee and went to the window. The morning was a thin gray wash over the skyline. Somewhere out there, a man with a perfect smile was reading a text that told him a lieutenant had not woken up. Somewhere else, a detective was pouring coffee and writing a report on a death that looked like a statistic. And somewhere between them, she was building a path only she could see, made of measured patience and sharp edges. Her phone pinged with a clip from local news sent by Nadia with the caption, "Told you he loved cameras." The clip showed Ricci at the gala an hour before she left, his smile wide, his eyes lit by a man who believed in tomorrow. The anchor's voice, cheerful and practiced, slid over footage of a black car outside a high-rise. No foul play suspected at this time. Arya muted the sound and watched his face freeze on the last frame before they cut away. She thought of peonies and promises and how quiet a room becomes after a voice stops. She let the clip end, then set the phone down and went back to the table. She opened the locket and touched the drive with the pad of her finger. Cold. Patient. She thought of Ethan's voice in the corridor. "I want to be right." She exhaled and let the breath steady her. "You'll get everything," she said to the empty room, "when I'm done." Later that morning, a florist arrived with a small arrangement of white peonies. No card, only a time written on the delivery slip in neat block letters. Noon. She smiled then, small and real. The city was a machine. She was learning which gears she could turn with one finger and which required both hands. By 11, she had become Elena again. The dress was dark green this time, less formal, with a softness that made people underestimate the person wearing it. She left the bracelet in the room and wore a thin gold chain instead. She wanted the next room to misjudge her in a new direction. As she locked the door, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She answered without a hello. "Good morning, Miss Marquez," Ethan said. She leaned her shoulder against the wall. "Detective, you're very efficient." "You gave me an hour," he said. "I took it." "How did you get my number?" "You left it with the gallerist you charmed in the first 10 minutes, he said. "I asked for it because I prefer to call rather than show up at a door uninvited." "That sounds like manners." "It's strategy," he said. "I wanted to see if you would answer. And now that I have." "Now I ask you a question," he said. "Do you keep your promises?" "Yes," she said. "Good," he said, "because I'm going to hold you to the one you made. You'll have what you want when I'm finished." "That's what I'm worried about," he said. "What finished looks like for you." "Clean," she said. "Clean for whom?" "For the dead," she said. "For the living after." He was silent long enough for the line to feel like a weight. Then he said, "Ricci is dead." "I heard," she said. "You're going to tell me that had nothing to do with you." "I'm going to tell you nothing," she said, "yet." "Right," he said, "yet." She heard voices in the background, the bureaucracy of a precinct waking. He lowered his tone. "Be careful. You have enemies who don't like to lose." "They're not the only ones," she said. "I'll see you around," he said. "You will," she said, and ended the call. She looked at her reflection in the mirror by the door. The woman looking back at her had a quiet mouth and eyes that told two different stories depending on who was listening. She touched the pendant once, then let it go. She stepped into the hall, closed the door, and moved toward noon, as if time belonged to her. Behind her on the nightstand, the bracelet lay still. The capsule space was empty. Somewhere across the city, a coroner clicked a box on a form. Somewhere in an office with a view, Salvatore Romano turned a page and decided which men were worth less now. And in the space between those decisions, a detective pressed his fingertips to his eyes and told himself he had not just given an hour to a ghost in a black dress. Arya took the elevator down and felt the floor stutter and then smooth. She smiled to herself, small and private. Part of the work was making men think they chose their own mistakes. The rest was walking the line alone without losing your balance. When she stepped out onto the sidewalk, the city wind hit her like a second wake-up. A black car idled at the curb. The driver with the scar tapped the wheel and gave her a glance that asked and answered the same question. "Where to?" he said. "Uptown," she said, "and then wherever the day takes us." He pulled into traffic. She looked out at the streets. If Ethan wanted clean endings, he would have to learn to love messy middles. She did. The rain had started again, a thin mist that clung to the street lamps and blurred the edges of the city. Arya moved through it like she belonged in the shadows, her coat drawn close, hair tucked under a black silk scarf. The night's work was done. Ricci was already a memory, but she wasn't heading to her hotel. Not yet. She felt the weight of being watched before she heard the footsteps. Measured. Not hurried. Not careless. The kind of pace meant to keep pressure on without spooking the prey. She didn't turn her head, but the corners of her mouth tugged in something that wasn't quite a smile. The alley she chose was narrow, lined with brick gone dark from years of rain. A single flickering light buzzed overhead, and the smell of wet asphalt filled the air. Her heels clicked twice more before she stopped, letting her bag slip to her shoulder in a calculated motion that kept her right hand free. "Following a woman at night," she said without turning, "isn't the safest career choice, detective." Ethan's voice came from just behind her. Low. Calm. Neither is poisoning mob lieutenants. She turned then slowly, meeting his gaze without flinching. His eyes were steady, searching her face for something she wasn't going to give. The mist caught in his hair, softening the sharpness of him, but nothing could soften the way he held himself, like a man who would step forward even if every instinct told him not to. "You have no proof," she said. Not tonight, he admitted, but you're not hard to read. Then maybe you should get a new book, she said, stepping closer until the light caught the faint sheen of her lipstick. One with a better ending. His jaw tightened. You made me a promise. I did. She let the words linger between them. And I keep my promises. After you're finished, he said. That could mean weeks, months, years. Meanwhile, people die. They're not people, Ethan, she said, and for the first time used his name. They're targets. Every single one of them has blood under their nails. Some of it might even belong to your friends in blue. That's not your call to make. It's exactly my call to make, she said, voice hardening. Because I'm the only one who can get close enough to do something about it. He shook his head slightly. And when it's over? What do you think happens to someone like you? You think you get to walk away? She stepped close enough to feel his breath in the damp air. Maybe I don't walk away. Maybe I run. Maybe I disappear. Or maybe... Her gaze dropped briefly to his mouth before lifting back to his eyes. Maybe I take a vacation. Alone. Not necessarily. The pause between them was thick. His hand flexed once at his side, a small tell she filed away. She could see the internal war in him, duty against something less definable. I can't protect you, he said finally. I don't need protection. Everyone needs protection eventually. Then I'll make you a deal, she said. You stay out of my way until I'm done. When it's over, I send you the file. Every name, every account, every drop of evidence. You can have your clean ending. And if I don't agree? She smiled slow. Then I make sure you never catch me. The mist thickened, drawing them into a quieter world. He studied her, and she let him, because she wanted him to remember this moment when the file landed on his desk. You're dangerous, he said. You like that? I don't. Yes, you do, she said softly. Something flickered in his eyes, annoyance maybe, or something more dangerous. She stepped past him, brushing close enough for her shoulder to graze his arm. I'll see you around, detective. She didn't get 3 steps before his voice came again. Aria. She stopped, turned slowly. I didn't tell you my name. You didn't have to, he said. She tilted her head. Then you know exactly what I'm capable of. I have an idea. Her smile curved in a way that wasn't kind. Good, keep it. She left him in the alley, the sound of her heels carrying her into the night. She didn't look back, but she could feel his gaze following her until she turned the corner. The next morning, the city was wrapped in pale fog. Aria's suite smelled faintly of coffee and fresh paper from the morning delivery. She sat at the small table by the window, flipping through a folder Marco had sent by courier. Inside, photographs, surveillance notes and financial ledgers, evidence of Romano's reach. Her phone buzzed, a blocked number she answered without hesitation. You didn't mention you were going to make it this easy for me, Ethan's voice said. You've been busy, she said. I've been reading reports about Ricci's death. And I keep finding your shadow in them. She leaned back in her chair. You're imagining things. I'm not in the habit of imagining, he said. I'm in the habit of proving. And yet here you are calling me instead of putting cuffs on me. You're not the only one who keeps promises, he said. I gave you time. And I'll use it. His voice dropped lower. Don't push me, Aria. Or what, you'll catch me? She let a small laugh slip. You'd have to be faster. You think I'm not? I think you'd rather follow than catch, she said, and ended the call before he could answer. That evening, she moved through the streets with the ease of someone who could vanish if she chose. Marco's driver dropped her 2 blocks from a discreet restaurant Romano's people frequented. She wasn't going inside. She was watching who did. From across the street, leaning casually against a lamppost, she saw him, Ethan. He was dressed down in jeans and a dark jacket, but he carried himself the same way. His eyes scanned the crowd, and more than once they found her, She let him see her looking back before she disappeared into the press of people. Hours later, she slipped the USB pendant from around her neck and set it on the desk beside her laptop. She didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, she poured herself a glass of wine and leaned back, letting the city's glow pour through the window. Her phone buzzed again, another blocked call. She answered, already knowing. "You're testing me," Ethan said. "Always," she replied. "Why?" "Because I need to know if you're worth keeping around." Silence hummed between them. "And am I?" he asked finally. Her smile was audible. "You'll find out soon enough." She hung up, her eyes drifting to the pendant. The file inside could change everything. But for now, it stayed sealed. Her game wasn't over. 3 nights later, she finished the job that had brought her here. Romano's men were dead or running. Romano himself. His time would come. She kept her word. The morning after the last body fell, Ethan found an unmarked envelope on his desk. Inside was the USB drive, along with a single line written in careful script. "Case closed. You win." But he didn't see her again. Until 2 weeks later. He woke in the back of a moving car, wrists bound loosely in front of him. The window showed a blur of green. Trees, not city. His gun and phone were gone. The driver didn't look back. She said you'd understand. The car stopped at a lakeside cabin. The air was clean, cool. The door opened, and there she was, Aria, dressed in jeans and a sweater, holding 2 glasses of wine. "You kidnapped me," he said. "I invited you," she corrected. "You were just asleep when I did it." He stepped out of the car, his eyes scanning the quiet shore. "This is a bad idea." She smiled, stepping closer. "The best ideas always are." He looked at her for a long moment, then took the glass. "What's this for?" "A retreat," she said. "From the world, from the rules. And after, we'll see." The lake lapped quietly at the shore. Somewhere in the distance, a bird called. In the silence between them, the tension coiled tight. "You're still dangerous," he said. "You're still here," she replied. And then, without another word, she leaned in and kissed him. Slow, deliberate. The kind of kiss that promised trouble. Trouble he didn't step away from. New York wore a new kind of silence that week. The kind that sat under the noise like a second skin. Traffic still pushed, horns still talked, subways still screamed in the tunnels, but the people who mattered to Salvatore Romano moved differently. Drivers checked their mirrors more often. Door guards counted faces twice. Shots at the bar were replaced by water with lemon. It was the city's way of saying it remembered Ricci and did not want to be the next name on a sheet. Aria let the city's tension smooth her path. Fear made people sloppy about the wrong things. They added guards at doors and forgot about hallways. They swapped meeting spots and kept the same habits. She had watched this dance before from other angles and countries. It never changed, just the music. Tonight the music was strings and soft laughter in a Chelsea gallery that claimed it loved light. Elena and Marcus arrived 20 minutes after the first wave and before the second, the moment when hosts were still fresh and watchers had found their walls. Her dress was smoke gray with a drape that showed nothing and suggested plenty. A thin gold chain at her throat. A small clutch that would pass any look. Hair in a clean knot. She stepped from a car that no one remembered 5 minutes later and moved toward the doors as if the room had always been waiting. Inside, white walls and polished concrete made everything look expensive. Paintings hung in careful isolation. Sculptures made of metal pretended to be dangerous and failed on purpose. Waiters moved like chess pieces. Couples stood in clusters. Their conversations built of names and money, and the business of pretending art arrived without fingerprints. She saw him within seconds. Matteo Calderone did not try to blend. He was not loud, not like Ricci, but he had gravity. Men faced him with shoulders slightly turned in, a small sign they would rather be inside the circle than out. He was taller than she had expected, a suit cut like a quiet knife, hair combed back without vanity. His nose had a ridge, like it had met a wall long ago and never forgot the lesson. The eyes were dark and calm. He stood with a city councilman Arya recognized from Marco's file, Aldo Raines, who had learned to nod with concern on television, and trade that nod for favors off it. A third man hovered near them, compact, with a face that would disappear in a crowd, which made it useful. Arya cataloged him as a runner, the type who moved envelopes and forgot faces on command. She did not watch them directly. She let her gaze track the lines of canvases, the reflections on polished frames, and used the edges of glass to check angles. She accepted a flute of champagne from a waiter and did not drink it. Her left wrist relaxed, the bracelet invisible to most eyes but holding a mic no bigger than a seed. The pendant hid warm and steady against her sternum. Her breathing was even. Her body red as board. A staffer with black glasses and a linen blazer appeared at her elbow with a pleased smile that tried not to be. He was the kind who thought he discovered people and then told other people about it. "You made it," he said. "The new series sold well in the first hour. I should have held 2 of them for you." She let the faintest surprise touch her voice. "You remember my taste after one visit." "I remember clients who do not argue about price," he said, then lowered his voice. "Mr. Calderon has a private preview in the back, friends of the gallery. If you want to see pieces before they hit the floor, this is the window." She ran her finger along the lip of her glass like a woman deciding whether to be charmed. "Friends of the gallery. I suppose I can be a friend?" He brightened. "Of course. Give me 2 minutes to make sure we have space." As he moved away, she felt a gaze settle with that light pressure she had come to know. She did not turn. She finished her slow study of a large canvas the color of thunder, then shifted her body as if searching for the artist's card and let him come into view at the edge of her vision. Ethan Hale had cleaned up tonight. The charcoal suit was simple, the tie dark, the shoes quiet. He wore the room like a man who would rather be somewhere else and had decided to be useful here instead. His eyes were the same as at the gala, steady and watchful and too honest to be comfortable for the men he chased. He stopped an arm's length away, enough space to pass, not enough to pretend they were strangers. "You like storms," he said, nodding at the canvas. "I like what storms leave behind," she said. "A debris," he said. "A clean air," she said. His gaze flicked toward Calderon and back. "You do know who you are standing 40 feet from." "Everyone in this room knows," she said. "They just prefer a nice word for it, and you came anyway." "I came because," she said. "Because what?" "Because the shortest distance to him is here," she said simply. He studied her the way a person studies a map they do not want to trust. "Calderon is not reachy," he said. "He is careful in ways that make other men lazy. He is patient in ways that make other men rash. And he does not want attention he did not pay for." "You sound almost fond," she said. "I sound like a man who does not want to scrape you off a sidewalk," he said. She let a breath leave her in a sound that was not quite a laugh. Touching image. "But I do not do sidewalks. I choose my ground." The staffer reappeared with a quick, eager nod. "We are ready. Private room in the back. Only a few people." He looked at Ethan, uncertain whether to include him in whatever this was supposed to be. Ethan saved him. "I am fine where I am." She tilted her head at Ethan as if they had just agreed on the weather. "Enjoy the storm." "Stay out of the lightning," he said. The staffer guided her past clusters of people and under a floating staircase that looked like it had been designed to make architects smile. They passed a camera mounted near the ceiling. Its red light was steady. She noted the angle. The corridor beyond the main room narrowed and quieted, the noise of the party dimming as if a hand had covered its mouth. White walls gave way to soft gray. A discreet door marked storage stood shut with a keypad lock. Another door stood ajar, spilling a thin ribbon of warm light. "In here," the staffer said, and tapped lightly on the open door. He looked inside, then stepped back, relieved to hand her off to the room. The private preview was less gallery than salon. 2 low couches faced a long table set with catalogs and a single bottle of wine, breathing like it had been told to. A woman with a clean bob and a green silk dress lounged with practiced ease, scrolling her phone. At the table, Aldo Rain sat a little too upright, nodding along while the compact runner leaned in close to murmur into his ear. Matteo stood by a painting leaned against the wall, hands in his pockets, not looking at it so much as looking at the act of not looking at it. The woman with the bob glanced up, took in Arya, and offered a small smile that said a new competitor had arrived, and she respected the hustle. The runner gave Arya a quick up and down, then dismissed her in favor of the councilman. Rains showed the smile he used when he wanted to look friendly and not concerned. The gallery manager introduced Arya as an acquisition specialist. She let the words sit in the air, without adding to them. Matteo's gaze found her, as if it had been waiting at the door. He did not smile. He did not extend a hand. He simply held the look 1 second longer than most men did, then tipped his chin once as if giving a small trial of respect. "You are new," he said. "Am I?" she said with a mild voice. "You were not at certain rooms last year," he said. "I was in other cities last year," she said. "Rome, Madrid, a month in Barcelona. The wrong kind of light there for winter art. Nice food." Rains laughed too quickly, eager to be included in a mood. Matteo did not react. He looked at Arya's shoes, the chain at her throat, the polish of her nails, the way her weight sat on one hip. His gaze was not sexual. It was practical, measuring a tool. "What do you buy?" he asked. "Things that prove taste," she said, "for people who need proof." The woman on the couch spoke without looking up. "That is all of them." Arya smiled. "Some men are honest enough to pay me for it." The runner's phone buzzed. He looked at it, covered the screen with his palm, and leaned closer to Rains. Rains's mouth tightened and then relaxed. The runner tucked the phone away with the relief of a message delivered and a task handed upward. Arya wandered to the painting propped against the wall and studied it with her head slightly tilted, as if comparing it to something in her mind. The brushwork was confident. The price would be wrong. She let herself look like a woman building a list. Her clutch rested in her left hand, the screen of the phone inside facing out. The mic on her wrist stayed asleep. Matteo stepped closer, but not close enough to invade. He smelled faintly of clean soap and something like cedar. "People say you have a good eye," he said. "People say many things," she answered, "few of them helpful." "What do you say?" "I say this artist likes being told he is brave," she said, still looking at the painting, "and that the gallery owner is smart enough to charge for that compliment." The bob-cut woman laughed at that, the sound sharper now with interest. The runner rolled his shoulders and checked the time. Rains wiped his forehead with a small napkin as if he had walked upstairs. Matteo watched Arya with calm patience. "And what do you say about rooms like this?" he asked. "That they are useful," she said. "For what?" "For seeing who thinks they own them," she said, and finally turned to meet his eyes. A beat of quiet. The runner stood. "I have to take a call," he said to no one and everyone, and slipped through a side door with the councilman's folder in his hand. Arya shifted to keep the table in her peripheral vision. The room had 2 cameras at the corners, one live, one dead for now. The dead one might be cosmetic or broken by design. She clocked their angles and then let her body language soften by a degree. "Barcelona," Matteo said. "Where did you stay?" "With friends," she said. "The Ike sample. Near a bakery that ruins all other bread." "You travel alone," he said. "I travel for work," she said. He nodded once, useful answer. He gestured at the painting. "If I buy this, what story do I tell when people ask why?" "You say the artist is tired of restraint," she said, "that he paints light as a substance and not a metaphor, that he is cheap now and will not be later. And if they ask if he is good?" "You say he is serious," she said. "Most people do not know the difference. It will impress them." Matteo's mouth tipped a fraction. Rains tried to mimic the expression and abandoned it. The woman on the couch locked her phone and stood with a stretch, then drifted over to Arya with a hand extended. "Nadia," she said, "I curate for men who think they invented taste." Arya took her hand. "Elena, I acquire for men who think they cannot afford embarrassment." We will be friends, Nadia said. Or enemies. Either way, we will be entertained. The runner slipped back in with a small exhale of success. He nodded to Rains, who checked his watch as if he had places to be that he did not control. The runner moved to the table, slid a folder under a catalog, and leaned toward the councilman again with his voice lower now. Half now, half when the committee clears the dock, he said. Your staff will see it as an allocation. No noise. Rains said something soft Arya could not catch. The runner answered without hesitation. He wants the vote next week. The number changes after that, and not in your favor. Arya let her clutch tilt so her phone camera could catch the table's surface in the black mirror of its screen. The audio would be soft through the leather, so she made the choice and let the phone slide out of the clutch into the shadow between the table and her hip as she leaned, just enough to look like she was reading a catalog. Her thumb, hidden from the room by the curve of the book, touched the screen to wake it and start a recording. The mic on her wrist stayed off. The phone would hear more in this quiet. Matteo's eyes did not miss the movement. He said nothing. He stepped a fraction to her left, altering the sight line of the live camera, blocking it with the clean line of his shoulder without looking up. It was a small favor or a test. Arya did not thank him with words. She thanked him by not acknowledging it. The runner continued. The non-profit will show the donation by Friday. The crate goes to the private dock Sunday night. No escorts. No reason to look. He flicked a glance at the councilman. You do your part, and you get your thing. Same as always. Rains sipped water like it might help his ability to digest the rest of his life. He nodded, the kind of nod men use when they are letting something ugly into their houses and do not want to admit they opened the door. Arya counted her breaths. She moved her body in a slow, gentle arc to block the runner's line of sight to the phone. She did not reach for it yet. 3 more sentences. 2. He said a bank name he should not have said out loud, and an account ending she could hold in her mind for later. She traced the numbers on the inside of her lower lip with her tongue, a trick Eva had taught her when she was 19, and learning how to remember what men wanted her to forget. Matteo set his hands on the back of the couch and looked at the painting again, as if the room were behaving the way rooms should. Nadia's attention hopped between Arya and the table, and Matteo, the way a cat watches a room with 2 birds. The runner straightened. That is it, he said. Rains stood, shook his hand, and managed to look grateful and important at the same time. Arya shifted, covered the phone with the curve of the catalog, and drew it back into her clutch in one smooth motion. She touched the screen once through the leather to stop the recording. Her pulse was steady. Her mouth was dry. She allowed herself the smallest swallow. A knock at the door. The gallery manager peeked in. Mr. Calderon, the Cohen is on the floor if you want to see how it hangs in the larger space. We are done here, Matteo said. The runner and Rains slipped out through the side door. Nadia made a face that said she would rather have stayed for the real show. Matteo looked at Arya. He did not ask what she had seen. He did not ask who she was, because he knew the answer would be a version of the truth he could use, and not the one she would give. He simply said, Will you be at the club tomorrow? Which club? She asked, because the answer mattered and pretending it did not was a language in rooms like this. The one where everyone pretends to enjoy losing, he said. If the cards are pretty, she said. They are beautiful, he said. Be careful not to fall in love with them. She let the smallest smile show. I do not fall in love with things I cannot keep. He held her gaze one more beat, then turned toward the door. Nadia caught Arya's arm lightly as he moved away. You have a problem, Nadia murmured. Just one, Arya said. The detective at the door has a look that says he wants to be your guardian angel and your jailer at the same time, Nadia said. That never ends clean. Nothing does, Arya said, and stepped into the corridor. Ethan stood there, not blocking the door, but making it clear he could. He did not look into the room. He looked at her, then at the live camera, then back to her. You got lost, he said. Again, she said. He glanced at the strap of her clutch. Hard to get lost when you leave crumbs for yourself. I prefer trails I can erase, she said. He lowered his voice. Tell me there is not a recording in that bag. You want me to lie to you, she said. I want you to trust me before the room decides you do not get to. He said. Trust is a large ask from a man who keeps showing up in rooms I am not supposed to be in, she said. You keep walking into rooms where people die, he said. Then we have that in common, she said softly. His jaw clenched and released. Calderon will know a stranger was in the back. He will pull on that thread until it stops moving. When it stops, he will cut it, and whoever is holding the other end. Then I will not be holding it, she said, and he searched her face. You promised me the file when you are done. I promised, she said, and I keep promises I make to men who deserve them. Do I, he asked. Ask me when this part is finished, she said. The party noise rose as they reached the main room again. The strings were playing something that wanted to be happy and could not get there. He stopped beside a sculpture and set his hands in his pockets like a man choosing not to reach for a fire alarm. There is a poker game tomorrow, he said, private. Calderon will be there, do not go. I do not respond well to do not, she said. Then consider it a warning from a man who knows the floor in that room is always a little slick, he said. I wear good shoes, she said. You already told me twice, and wear better ones, he said. She almost smiled. He almost smiled back. A camera clicked somewhere and they both turned away at the same time, out of habit, the photo catching two profiles that did not want to be caught. Arya set her empty flute on a tray, thanked a waiter she did not need to thank, and crossed to the exit at a pace that matched the room's pulse. She did not look back at Calderoni. She did not look back at Ethan. She let the door breathe cool night air into her lungs and stepped onto the sidewalk where the city's larger heart beat hard and slow. The car waited half a block down, the driver with the scar leaning one elbow on the window as if no one in the world had ever tried to shoot him. He opened the door, and she slid in, her body loosening by degrees once the street began to move again. How was the church, he said in the mirror, his code for rooms with white walls and quiet sin. They lit a candle and pretended it mattered, she said. He grunted, pleased by the answer. Marco, he added, tapping his ear. She took the phone the driver passed back and pressed it to her ear. It is done, she said without preamble. What is done? Marco asked. He was at his desk by the sound of it, ice-knocking glass when he moved the way he did when thinking. The docs. A non-profit cover. Half now, half after the vote. Private Sunday night. The number shifts next week. She gave him the bank's name and the account ending. She kept her voice even in case someone else ever listened to this call. Good, he said, less good for them. Did our friend notice you noticing? He noticed everything, she said. He allowed what he wanted to allow. Then he is already playing with you, Marco said, or he wants you to think he is. Either way, you do not blink. I do not, she said. Tomorrow, he said. The cards, she said. Yes, he said. And another thread to pull. You will be watched. Pretend not to notice, then make them regret they were obvious. Always, she said, and handed the phone back. The city slid past, a layer cake of glass and grime. She rested her head against the cool window for one long blink and saw Italy in the dark glass, rain slanting across a cemetery, peonies cut from a fence, her palm pressed to soil. When she opened her eyes again, the city gave her only itself, loud and bright, and ready to be broken and rebuilt. Her phone buzzed with a message from a number she had already learned to recognize, even blocked. You left without saying goodbye, Ethan wrote. I did not come to say hello, she sent back. You are threading a needle with a grenade under the table, he wrote. You do have a way with images, she wrote. I do not want to write the report where I explain why I did not stop you, he wrote. You will not have to, she wrote. You will write a different report later. Do not make me a liar, he wrote. Do not make me a ghost, she wrote. She set the phone face down in her lap and closed her eyes again for a breath that did not belong to anyone else. The driver took a left without signaling. The car slipped into the dark like a thought. At the hotel, she rode the elevator up with a couple arguing softly about a frame color and with a man in a suit who smelled like nervous aftershave. She stepped into her room and paused in the doorway long enough to let the silence register. No weight shifted in the dark. no unfamiliar smell. She closed the door with the softest latch and set the clutch on the table. She slid the phone out, checked the recording with the volume down low, and watched the little blue line dance through words that would ruin men if placed on the right desk. She saved it twice, once to a place that looked obvious and once to a place that would ask 3 wrong passwords before it erased itself. She touched the pendant out of habit and felt its small, cold truth. The necklace was a promise waiting. The new file was a lever. Her reflection in the window looked like a woman who had just bought a painting. Under the glass, the city glowed. She thought of Calderon's eyes and the way he had blocked a camera without moving more than an inch. She thought of Ethan's voice in the hall, low and angry and careful. She thought of Marco saying less good for them and heard in it something like approval. She lifted a glass of water and drank it slowly until it was empty. Then she wrote a single note by hand on the hotel pad because Eva had taught her that hands remembered what phones forgot. Doc, Sunday. Non-profit cover. Rains. Runner with scar on left knuckle. Account N963. She folded the paper and slid it behind the liner of her shoe. When she turned off the lights, the city kept shining. She lay on top of the covers for a minute, then slipped under them because she needed to sleep and wanted to make it easy. The pendant stayed on her skin. Her last thought was not about the dock or the cards or the men who thought they owned rooms. It was of a lake under a soft sky, and a kiss she had not planned, and a promise she had made that she would keep, even if it took the rest of her. Morning would come with rain. Night still had work to do. Rain slicked the glass of Aria's 12th floor hotel suite, the city skyline a blur of gold and steel behind it. She sat cross-legged on the couch, laptop open, earbuds in, her gaze fixed on the waveform of the audio file she'd recorded earlier. Each spike on the graph was a moment of corruption, a bribe disguised as a donation, promises spoken in half-sentences and broken grammar. She leaned forward, replaying a section, Calderon's associate laughing as he handed an envelope to the councilman. "You'll have it by Tuesday. No one asks questions, and the mayor's campaign fund stays healthy." Useful. Damning even, but not enough. She needed more than casual criminal chatter. She needed details, dates, account numbers, the kind of proof that would put Calderon's allies under so much pressure they'd turn on him. And she needed it soon. The longer she stayed in New York under this name, the greater the chance someone would recognize her. A sharp knock broke her focus, not the hesitant kind from room service, but firm, deliberate. Aria's stomach tightened. She closed the laptop, sliding it under a cushion, and crossed to the door barefoot, the silk hem of her robe brushing the floor. "Who is it?" "Open the door, Aria." Ethan's voice. Steady but threaded with irritation. She hesitated, then unlocked it. He stood there in the dim hall, hair damp from the rain, his suit jacket unbuttoned like he'd walked straight from the street without caring how it looked. His eyes swept over her. Bare legs, robe half-tied, and she knew he was cataloging details the way a cop always did, no matter the personal history. "Detective Hale," she said, leaning against the frame. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" "You disappeared from the gallery before the champagne was even warm." He stepped past her without waiting for permission. "And the restricted area just happened to have its door ajar after you were gone." Aria closed the door, her pulse spiking. "You followed me." "I noticed you were missing." He turned to face her, rainwater dripping from his hair onto the carpet. "And I know Calderon's circle. You being anywhere near them isn't coincidence." She moved to the wet bar, pouring herself a drink more for the illusion of calm than anything. "Maybe I enjoy art. Maybe I enjoy poker. Maybe I enjoy watching dangerous men lose their shirts." His jaw flexed. "You're playing with fire." "Maybe I like the burn." Ethan crossed the room in 2 strides, planting himself in her space, the smell of rain and faint cologne between them. "I've seen women think they can handle men like him. It doesn't end well." Aria met his stare without flinching. "And I've seen men underestimate women who've already survived worse." The tension was tangible, a taut wire between them. She could feel the pull in her own chest, that dangerous mix of challenge and something warmer she refused to name. "What did you get tonight?" he asked finally. She shrugged, sipping her drink. "Enough to keep me interested." "Let me hear it." She tilted her head, feigning consideration, then set the glass down and crossed to the couch. Sliding the laptop free, she cued a short segment of the recording. The envelope exchange, the laugh, the vague promises. Ethan listened, his expression tightening. "This is enough for a corruption case," he said. "You could walk away now." "I could," she agreed. "But I won't. You're after Calderon." It wasn't a question. She smiled faintly. "I'm after the truth." "That's not all." She didn't answer, which was answer enough. "Aria," his voice dropped, almost soft now. "You want revenge, I get it. But that's not justice, and you know it." The softness almost broke something in her. Almost, but she forced her tone cool. "Justice doesn't keep me warm at night." For a moment, neither of them moved. The rain filled the silence. Then he sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "What's your plan?" She didn't tell him about the poker game or the slow paralytic she'd procured. She simply said, "I'm going to a gathering tomorrow night. High stakes, high value, loose tongues. And you think you'll just stroll in and get what you need?" "I know I will." His eyes narrowed. "If you're going, I'm going, one way or another." "Why, detective, worried about me? Worried you'll put a bullet in the wrong man and blow every case I've been building for 2 years." "Then stay close," she murmured, brushing past him toward the bedroom. "If you can keep up." Ethan caught her wrist before she disappeared through the doorway. His hand was warm, firm, and for one dangerous heartbeat she thought he might pull her closer. Instead, he released her slowly, his thumb grazing her skin in a way that felt deliberate. "I'll be there," he said. Aria turned away before he could see her reaction, shutting the door between them. The next evening, Aria stood before the full-length mirror in her suite, fastening the diamond clasp at her throat. The gown was black silk, slit high up the thigh. The neckline designed to draw eyes exactly where she wanted them. Her hair was swept up, a few deliberate strands framing her face. The image was pure elegance, but beneath it, strapped to her thigh, was the vial of paralytic and a stiletto-thin blade. She took one last look at herself, then at the small leather case on the dresser, holding her false IDs, burner phone, and cash. No hesitations. The private poker game was hosted at an exclusive midtown club, a place of velvet curtains, gold-rimmed glasses, and men who believed their wealth could buy them invisibility. Calderon was one of them. As she stepped from the car, the doorman's gaze flicked over her before he pulled the door open. Inside, the air smelled of expensive liquor and cigar smoke. Low jazz played under the murmur of voices. "Miss Marquez." The host, a man with slicked back hair and a smile like a blade, took her coat. "Mr. Calderon is expecting you." She let the name settle like perfume. "Of course he is." A waiter offered champagne. She accepted, using the glass as a prop while she scanned the room. Calderon was at the center table, leaning back in his chair like a king in his court. His dark suit was perfectly tailored, his cufflinks gleaming. Beside him sat men whose faces she recognized from news articles and whispered police briefings. She approached slowly, timing her steps with the music. Calderon's gaze found her before she reached the table, his mouth curving in appreciation. "Miss Marquez," he said, standing to pull out her chair. "It's not often I'm graced with such beauty at my games." She smiled, settling in. "I was told the stakes were worth my time." The dealer began to shuffle. Across the room near the bar, a figure caught her eye. Ethan, dressed in dark charcoal, speaking casually with a man she knew was one of the club's security managers. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second, and she caught the faintest shake of his head. She ignored it, focusing instead on the cards, the flow of conversation, the rhythm of Calderon's tells. Between hands, she let the conversation drift toward business, toward shipments and schedules. A careless comment from one of his associates, a smirk from Calderon. It was all data, When the moment felt right, she leaned in, her hand brushing Calderon's wrist as she passed him a fresh drink. "To new acquaintances," she murmured. He clinked glasses with her, oblivious to the drop of clear liquid she'd let fall into his whiskey. From the corner of her vision, she saw Ethan straighten at the bar, his attention fixed entirely on her. She didn't look his way again. The game went on. Calderon laughed, won a few hands, lost more. But she could see it starting. The slight stiffness in his shoulders, the way his grip on the cards faltered. And when at last he excused himself from the table, she rose a moment later, smooth as silk, her expression unreadable. She could feel Ethan moving too, intercepting her path near the corridor that led to the private rooms. "Don't," he said quietly, blocking her with his body. She tilted her head, the faintest smile playing at her lips. "Don't what?" "You know exactly what. If you do this, I won't be able to look the other way." Her pulse was steady. "Then don't look." She stepped past him close enough for her shoulder to brush his, leaving the scent of her perfume in her wake as she slipped into the shadows after Calderon. The private lounge was a world of gold and shadow. A haze of cigar smoke curled toward a domed ceiling where low chandeliers spilled amber light across velvet chairs and polished mahogany. It smelled of expensive whiskey, rare tobacco, and power. The kind of room where men gambled fortunes and traded secrets in the same breath. Arya stood in the doorway, the faintest trace of a smile playing at her lips. Tonight she was Elena Marcus, an art dealer with a taste for risk. The black silk gown skimmed her frame like it had been poured there, its slit revealing just enough leg to draw the eye without screaming for it. Her hair was swept into an elegant twist, a few deliberate strands loose to soften her face. Diamonds glinted at her ears, subtle but real. Matteo Calderoni was already at the table, leaning back in his chair with calculated ease, the warm light catching the scar that carved from his temple toward his jaw. The men around him wore tailored suits and guarded expressions. Some she recognized from Romano's circle, others she didn't. Each one was dangerous in his own way. "Miss Marquez," Calderon said, rising just enough to kiss her hand. His grip lingered an instant too long. "I wasn't expecting you." "That's the beauty of an invitation," she replied, letting her voice carry the faintest lilt of amusement. "It leaves room for surprise." He gestured to the empty chair beside him. "Join us. See if your luck at the tables matches your luck in business." She slid into the seat, setting her clutch down on the table's edge. From here, she could smell the faint cologne beneath Calderon's cigar smoke. Something sharp and metallic beneath the sweetness. The game began with quiet intensity, chips clicking, cards sliding across green felt, the low murmur of conversation in Italian and English. Arya played carefully, winning just enough to keep interest without drawing suspicion. Her real focus was on Calderon, his tells, his rhythm, the way his voice shifted when the stakes rose. Between hands, she leaned toward him, her arm brushing his. "You must have other interests beyond poker, Matteo. Men like you. They always do." His mouth curved. "Interests, yes, investments, opportunities, the right connections." He watched her eyes as he spoke, gauging her interest the way a predator sizes its prey. "There's a shipment coming in next week, private dock. Very lucrative. The kind of thing a woman with your reach might appreciate." She let her smile deepen as though impressed even as she filed the information away. "Perhaps we should talk more after the game." The waiter passed behind them, setting down fresh drinks. Arya's hand moved as if to adjust her clutch, but her fingers brushed the edge of Calderon's glass. A subtle twist of her wrist, and a nearly invisible drop of liquid slid into the amber whiskey. The paralytic would work slowly. Nothing dramatic, just a creeping weakness that would hit after the night's festivities. Across the table, a new voice cut through the hum of conversation. "Mind if I join?" Her head lifted before she could stop herself. Ethan stood there, dressed in a suit that fit too well to be borrowed, a casual confidence in his stance that didn't hide the sharpness in his eyes. He looked like he belonged in this room, though she knew damn well he didn't. Calderon eyed him with polite suspicion. "And you are?" A consultant, Ethan said smoothly, flashing a card she didn't need to see to know was fake. Security matters. Calderon's gaze flicked toward Arya, then back to Ethan. Then you're in the right place. Have a seat. Ethan took the chair across from her. His eyes met hers briefly. A silent exchange that said too much. Warning, challenge, something deeper neither of them dared voice here. The game resumed. Arya felt his gaze brush her now and then, sharp as the edge of a blade. She kept her expression even, her movements steady, but her pulse betrayed her. She hated that he could still do that to her. When the last hand was dealt and Calderon raked in a modest win, he rose, buttoning his jacket. Gentlemen, Miss Marquez, enjoy the rest of your night. He was smiling, but she saw it. The faint stiffness in his movements, the way his left hand pressed briefly against his side. The paralytic was beginning its work. Arya stood smoothly, clutch in hand. Excuse me a moment, she said to no one in particular, following Calderon toward the corridor that led to the private exits. She didn't make it more than 10 paces before a shadow detached itself from the wall. Don't. Ethan's voice was low but firm, blocking her path with a broad shoulder. She arched a brow. Don't what? Don't do what I think you're about to do. Her smile was slow, dangerous. And what is it you think I'm about to do? His jaw tightened. You've got him on something, I can see it in his face. You finish this here, there's no going back. I won't be able to look the other way again. She stepped closer, her perfume winding between them, her voice a murmur meant only for him. You're assuming I want you to look the other way. Their eyes locked, his steady, hers gleaming with defiance. For a moment, the tension between them was a live wire, humming with heat and danger. Then she slipped past him, her hand brushing his arm just enough to feel the muscle tense beneath his suit. He didn't follow. Not immediately. But she could feel him watching as she disappeared into the dimly lit hall, each step taking her deeper into the shadows, where Calderon waited, and where the night's work would finally be done. The morning after the poker game, the city felt different. Not in any way the average person would notice. Traffic still pulsed along the riverside. The same coffee vendors shouted over the hiss of steam. The same street musicians played old jazz that drifted across damp cobblestones. But beneath it, in the quiet corners where whispers carried more weight than shouts, the underworld was buzzing. Calderon was alive. That much had spread fast. He'd walked out of the private club sometime after midnight, flanked by 2 more guards than he'd arrived with, his expression unreadable. No one had seen him since. Rumor had it he was furious, paranoid, and that paranoia made him dangerous. For Arya, it meant one thing. Her window was shrinking. She sat at the small table of her hotel suite, a porcelain cup of black coffee cooling between her hands. The storm predicted for later in the day was already pushing heavy, damp air through the city, pressing against the glass. She'd barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the flick of Ethan's wrist last night, the way he'd pulled the moment out from under her, unraveling her clean shot without so much as breaking a sweat. It had been clean. Perfect. Until he decided it wasn't. She told herself the irritation was professional, but irritation didn't explain the other thing, how his eyes had locked with hers through the crowd. The strange charge there. It wasn't trust. It wasn't even respect. But it was recognition, a dangerous one. Her phone buzzed once, a soft vibration across the table. The encrypted message was simple. Asterisk, be careful. He's looking for you. No signature, but she didn't need one. She deleted it, finished her coffee, and decided she wasn't going to hide. By mid-morning, the riverside cafes were filling with the late breakfast crowd. Tourists with maps folded in their laps, businessmen on second espressos, women with handbags worth more than most people's rent. Arya chose the smallest one on the corner, the one with ivy curling along its awning, and mismatched chairs scattered beneath white umbrellas. She was halfway through her cappuccino when she felt him. No footsteps, no shadow, just that shift in the air that made her skin prickle. She didn't look up immediately, but when she did, Ethan was already standing there. Dark jacket, dark eyes, the faintest smirk that didn't quite reach them. Coincidence, she asked, tilting her head, voice smooth as glass. He took the chair opposite her without asking. You don't believe in those. And yet here you are. He signaled to the waiter, ordered black coffee without looking at the menu. You made quite an impression last night. She arched an eyebrow. On who? Calderon. His security has your picture now. You're on his watch list. That's convenient, saves me the trouble of knocking on his door. Or it makes you a target. His tone was flat, but his gaze lingered on her face, searching for something. She met it with practiced calm. Tell me, Ethan. Are you here to warn me, or to follow me? He leaned back slightly, maybe both. Her lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. How flattering. The coffees arrived, the clink of porcelain, a brief interruption. For a few moments they drank in silence, the hum of conversation around them almost enough to mask the undercurrent between them. You had your shot last night, he said finally. You could have taken it clean. And you ruined it. I saved you. From what? Doing my job? He didn't answer right away. The pause was deliberate. From walking into something you don't understand. She laughed softly, shaking her head. I understand plenty. Calderon's careful, but he's not untouchable. Everyone's untouchable until they're not. The trick is living long enough to see it. Her eyes narrowed slightly. That sounds like something you'd say to someone you actually care about. Maybe I do. It was said lightly, but it landed heavier than it should have. She leaned forward, her voice low enough that it was almost lost to the wind coming off the river. Careful, Ethan. You keep talking like that, people might think you have a reason to keep me alive. He held her gaze for a beat too long. Then his phone buzzed. He checked it, slid it back into his pocket. Calderon's retreating to his estate, pulling out of public view for a few days. Aria's pulse ticked faster. Then this is my chance. It's bait, or it's an opportunity. He stood, dropping enough cash on the table to cover both drinks. Either way, it's coming soon. As he walked away, she realized her hands were curled around her cup a little too tightly. By late afternoon, the sky had begun to darken. The forecasted storm was crawling closer, dragging the horizon into a bruised blue. Aria spent the day gathering small threads, movements of Calderon's men, shipments rerouted, names whispered in back rooms. By evening, she was ready for her next step. The charity auction was the kind of event that could bleed a person's bank account dry in a single bid. Paintings, jewelry, rare vintages, and it was the perfect place for Calderon's men to mingle with the city's elite. Tonight, Aria wore Elena Marquez's skin, sleek black dress, diamond earrings, hair swept into a chignon that bared the line of her neck. The ballroom shimmered under chandeliers, laughter and polite applause echoing as the auctioneer announced each lot. Waiters moved through the crowd with trays of champagne, silver shoes clicking against marble floors. She spotted 3 of Calderon's inner circle near the back. Enforcers in tailored suits, their eyes scanning the room with the detachment of predators. She was deep in a conversation with a philanthropist she had no intention of remembering when she felt a familiar gaze on her. Turning slightly, she found Ethan leaning against the far wall, perfectly at ease, a glass of whiskey in hand. His eyes didn't wander. They never did. He made his way toward her slowly, unhurried, as if they weren't in a room full of people who might sell either of them out for the right price. When he reached her, he extended a hand. Dance? It wasn't really a question. She took it. The waltz was slow, deliberate. His hand at her waist was steady but warm, guiding her across the polished floor as if they'd done this 100 times before. Their eyes held as much conversation as their words. You're bold showing up here, she murmured. You're beautiful when you're lying, he said. She laughed under her breath, and you're irritating when you're right. Who were you watching before I got here? She tilted her head. Wouldn't you like to know? Already do. They moved in sync, but every step felt like a test. How close she'd let him. How far he'd push before she pushed back. Halfway through the dance, she caught sight of her contact slipping into a side hallway. She stepped back from Ethan. Duty calls. Don't wander off alone. She didn't answer, just disappeared into the corridor. The kitchen's heat hit her immediately. Steam, the scent of roasting meat, the clang of pans. Her contact, a thin man with restless eyes, pulled her aside near the storage room. It's happening, he said quickly. Private dinner 2 nights from now, only Calderon's inner circle. How many? 6, maybe 7, all invitations only. Then I'll need one. He shook his head. Can't help you there, too risky. She handed him a small envelope. You've already helped. He slipped away, disappearing among the kitchen staff. As she stepped back into the hallway, Ethan was there. One hand braced against the wall beside her head, the other resting casually in his pocket. You're reckless, he said quietly. You're in my way. Your way leads to a closed casket. She leaned in slightly, her voice brushing his jaw. Then move. For a second, neither of them moved. The air was tight between them. The kind of tension that could tip into something dangerous if either of them let it. Finally, he stepped back. You don't make promises, do you? Not the kind you want. His mouth curved faintly. Good. I don't trust people who keep them. The auction house glowed like a lantern against the gathering storm, its marble steps slick from a brief spit of rain. A string quartet played from a raised platform inside, their sound precise enough to feel expensive. Aria let Elena and Marcus arrive 5 minutes after the last flashbulb outside and 3 minutes before the first paddle went up. Timing said more than an introduction ever could. She threaded through the lobby beneath the chandelier's spill of light, accepting nods from men who collected art as if it could launder their appetites. Her dress was red, the exact shade that made people lie twice. A diamond at her ear caught and threw back the room's brightness. She carried herself the way the truly rich did, which was to say, as if nothing could ever be taken from her. The auctioneer's patter drifted from the main hall, punctuated by polite bursts of applause. Waiters flowed like current, lifting trays just out of reach of clumsy hands. The air smelled of wax, chilled champagne, and the white lilies banked under the stairs that would be wilting by morning. She didn't need to look to feel him enter. Energy shifted. A handful of conversations faltered by a syllable. The room made space without knowing it had. When she turned, Ethan stood at the far end, casually framed by a doorway as if the architecture had been designed to temper him. Dark suit, open focus, the steadiness of a man who had taught himself to be part of the furniture until he needed not to be. He didn't approach at once, he let her see him. That was the warning and the invitation both. Aria accepted a flute of champagne she had no intention of finishing, and drifted toward a Calderon lieutenant she recognized from the gallery, the compact man with the forgettable face, tonight in a midnight jacket, and a new watch he hadn't learned not to admire. He was standing with a banker whose smile couldn't find his eyes. She took her place at the fringe of their circle and listened the way a good thief does, with her expressions. Logistics will stabilize after the vote, the banker said, which meant money had already moved. Stability is a sales pitch, the lieutenant said, which meant he didn't believe it and wanted the banker to think he did. Their laughter was soft and temporary. The lieutenant's gaze slid past Aria without catching long enough to burn. Good. He had noticed her and filed her as decoration, the safest category. Ethan's reflection joined hers in a polished column at her left. She didn't turn. Your color, he murmured. Your opinion, she said, lifting the glass and letting bubbles kiss her lip. Accurate, he said. She caught his face in the mirrored slice, a small line at one corner of his mouth, the line that appeared when he was telling himself not to reach for something. He didn't push into her circle. He waited until the lieutenant excused himself to greet someone more important. Then Ethan stepped closer. "You do realize half this room would sell the other half for a tax break," he said. "Tax breaks are honest," she replied. "They tell you exactly who someone is." He glanced after the lieutenant. "You're collecting tells again." "I never stopped." "Then tell me one." She considered, then nodded toward a woman with a flawless knot of hair and a strand of pearls that had outlived 3 marriages. "She keeps touching the clasp. The man she came with gave it to her 5 minutes ago as an apology. He thinks he's forgiven. And her? She thinks she won," Arya said, "and they're both wrong." The next lot rolled in, an enormous abstract that looked expensive enough to confuse guilt with taste. The auctioneer's cadence quickened. Paddles rose, numbers leapt. Arya let the crowd's attention tilt away and finally turned fully to Ethan. "You're early," she said. "I'm on time," he said. "You're the one who likes to enter during applause." "Applause is for donors," she said. "I'm here for something more useful." "An invitation. I prefer to call it a door." He dropped his voice. "If Calderoni is pulling his circle close, your door will be guarded by men who don't blink." "I don't need them to blink," she said. "I need them to look the wrong way for 1 second." The quartet slid into a waltz. Couples lifted away from conversation like fish changing depth. Ethan set down his empty glass and held out his hand without ceremony. "Dance with me," he said, "and explain why. We're being watched." "By whom?" "Everyone I don't like," he said. She put her fingers in his and let him lead her into the slow drift of bodies. The floor had been waxed to a shine that refused to grip. His palm at the small of her back was the only sure point. He didn't press, didn't claim. He guided. It made it worse. "You're tense," he murmured. "I'm thinking," she said. "About me." "About a table I want to sit at," she said. He smiled, looking down just long enough to unfocus the world. "You won't sit. You'll conduct." "Only when the orchestra listens." "Do I?" "You don't know the music yet," she said. He turned them, cutting a clean arc across the room, putting her back to a cluster of men whose cufflinks could fund a small school. "You're going to slip away," he said. "Soon." "Where?" "Kitchen," she said. "Of course." The song stretched itself thin and graceful. She could feel the steady beat of his pulse through his wrist. He smelled like rain that had decided not to fall. She looked over his shoulder at a reflection and saw the compact lieutenant again, now whispering in a man's ear with the concentration of someone planting a story. "Do you ever tire of pretending you're not here for me?" she asked, too light to accuse. He met her eyes. "Do you?" The music ended without a flourish. Applause scattered like coins. He didn't let go at once. She didn't pull. Then she did. Because the next move only worked with distance. "Try not to notice I'm gone," she said. "I always notice," he said. She set down her flute on a tray without leaving a fingerprint and slipped into the cool shadow of a corridor lined with gilt mirrors and photographs of benefactors in black and white. A guard at the end scanned her and decided red dresses came with permission. She passed through a service door and was inside the hum, heat, steel, shouted orders, the percussion of plates. Kitchen staff danced to the practiced ballet of 100 tiny emergencies. She moved along the edges, careful not to break a line or become an obstacle. Near the back, beside a stack of white boxes and a door marked cold, she found Lucia. The girl wore black sneakers and a white jacket too big for her shoulders. Her hair was pinned in a knot that had fallen once and been fixed without a mirror. She clutched a clipboard like a shield. When she saw Arya, her mouth made a small uncertain shape. 5 minutes, Arya said, voice low. Lucia glanced over her shoulder. 3. We can do a lot with 3. They slid into a shallow alcove meant for a cart. The hum covered them. A pot clanged. Someone cursed in Italian and was forgiven in English. You work at his estate, Arya said. I work in a kitchen, Lucia answered. Which kitchen? Lucia's throat moved. You know. Say it anyway. Calderone's, Lucia said, breath thinned by fear and resolve. I prep. Desserts. Salads. Knives. Good, Arya said. Knives tell the truth. Lucia looked at the clipboard and not at Arya. I shouldn't be talking to you. You're not, Arya said. You're listening to yourself make a choice. Lucia swallowed. He's holding a dinner, private, 2 nights. The guest list was changed this morning. They're printing invitations with a crest and a number. They check both at the door. How many? 9 men, Lucia said. Maybe 10. The last name is always a ghost until the day of. Phones? Taken. Held in sealed pouches. Staff turned theirs in before shift. Cameras? In the halls, not in the dining room, Lucia said. He thinks real power looks ugly on tape. Delivery windows. Small, Lucia said. 2 vans, 1 hour apart. Drivers checked at the gate and once again under the portico. The guard with the scar counts crates without touching them. Code word? Lucia blinked. For what? For when something goes wrong. She looked at her shoes. Saint's name, she said. They change it every night. Do you know it? For tonight, Lucia said, not for his house. The lieutenant already changed it twice since morning. Arya watched a waiter pass with a tray of tiny gold leaf desserts. How do you get in without an invitation? You don't, Lucia said. You become part of the room before the room is made. You'll help me, Arya said. I could lose everything. You could keep your brother alive, Arya said softly. Shock snapped Lucia's gaze up. Her fingers tightened on the clipboard. I don't need to know his name, Arya said. Only that he exists. Debt is a leash. I don't like leashes. Lucia's eyes went wet for 1 second and then stern again. If they catch me. They won't, Arya said. Because you'll be doing nothing wrong. When your chef asks you why the knives are in a different order, you'll say you wanted to do it right. When the guard asks why the pantry door sticks, you'll say it always does. When the escort at the gate asks you who the guest is, you'll say delivery when you mean grace. Lucia exhaled a laugh that wasn't one. You talk like a movie. No, Arya said, I talk like a kitchen. Everything in its place. Everything with a purpose. For a heartbeat, Lucia believed her own courage. Then footsteps approached too quickly. She flinched back, shielding the clipboard. The head chef swept past, trailing authority and steam. He didn't notice them. He never did, which was part of the problem and all of the answer. 2 nights, Lucia said. 8 o'clock, he wants veal and something that looks like innocence. Thank you, Arya said, and slid a small envelope between the pages of the clipboard. For flour, she added aloud, in case anyone cared to hear. Lucia tucked it without looking. You were never here, she said. You'll sleep, Arya answered. No one sleeps in that house, Lucia said, and disappeared into the heat. Arya eased back into the corridor, slowed her breathing, straightened the line of her dress. She counted to 8, enough time for a camera to blink, and opened the door into the dim side hallway that fed the main lobby. He was waiting. One hand braced against the wall by her head, the other in his pocket as if casual could disguise concentration. He didn't move when she stepped close. He was already there. What did you just trade for that envelope? Ethan asked. Flour, she said. Try again. A better night, she said. He studied her face as if it might smudge. You need to stop using people who don't know the rules. I'm rewriting them. He leaned closer, close enough for his breath to warm her cheek. Don't do it at the expense of someone who won't survive the learning curve. You don't get to grant grace and call it justice, she said, not stepping back. He feeds men who starve whole streets. He buys votes with promises that rot before they're tallied. If you think I'm breaking something, it's because it was already broken. Arya, he said, and the way he said her name carried a warning and a wish. Say it louder, she murmured. Maybe the walls will testify. His palm flattened against the wallpaper beside her head. He wasn't trapping her. He was giving the corridor a shape. She felt the faint scrape of the paper through her hair. The hallway's low light made his eyes darker, turned his mouth into a line she wanted to disrupt. 2 nights, he said quietly. Private dinner. Are you going to tell me how you plan to walk into that house? No, she said. Then tell me why you keep pretending you don't want help. Because help comes with strings, she said. I'm offering wire, he said. Strong enough to hold, thin enough not to show. You want me to owe you. I want you alive, he said. She let the words land. They didn't shake her. They tilted something inside by a degree she resented. You keep saying things that sound like truths, she said. You should be careful. Of what? Of me believing you, she said. A service door opened at the far end. Laughter spilled and died. He didn't look away from her even then, which told her more than the words ever could. Walk me back into the room, she said. Make it look like I was always where I was supposed to be. They moved together into the lobby as if the conversation had been about art. He kept his hand near her elbow, but not on it. The quartet slid into something lighter to rest the donors. The crowd admired itself. Nadia materialized like smoke, her smile a secret folded twice. You're late to mischief, Nadia murmured to Arya, eyes flicking to Ethan and back. And the detective looks like a man who hasn't decided which side of sin to stand on. Ethan offered Nadia a fraction of a nod. I'm only here for the tax deduction. Then you'll fit, Nadia said, amused. She drifted away, catching a wine glass mid-spill as if she had choreographed gravity. Arya and Ethan stopped at the edge of the bidding floor where a small sculpture was being praised beyond its merit. The compact lieutenant had returned, now laughing too loudly at something a councilman said to prove he wasn't listening for footsteps behind him. You're inside, girl, Ethan said under the noise. Does she understand what this costs? She understands hunger, Arya said, and fear, and the feeling you get when you realize the person who signs your paycheck would sell you for parts if it bought him an hour. He didn't argue. It unsettled her more than a speech would have. He finished his whiskey and set the glass on a tray a second before a waiter would have asked to take it. He watched the lieutenant through the reflection in a gilded frame, and not directly, which meant he had learned more than police academy had taught him. You'll need an invitation, he said, a real one, not paper, a person. I'm working on it, she said. What if I can get you one? He said, and what would that cost? Your promise you won't kill him at the table, he said. She turned her head, met his eyes. No. That's the deal. Then make another one, she said. The auctioneer's gavel popped, cheerful as a gun in a comedy. A paddle went up. Money changed hands as silently as rain. You think I want to watch you put a knife in him, Ethan said, still quiet. I think you want to watch me end something you can't in a courtroom, she said. And I think you hate that thought. You're not wrong, he said, which surprised them both. He shifted an inch closer, his sleeve brushed her bare arm. Heat climbed her skin where fabric met skin, not because of the touch, but because of the permission implied by not taking advantage of it. 2 nights, he repeated. You need a way in if I bring you one. You'll want something for it, she said. You should. Everyone should. It makes transactions honest. I want you to walk out, he said, that's all. She looked back into the room, into the tilt and glitter of privilege. Walking out implies I walked in for free. Nothing here is free, he said. Exactly, she said. Nadia reappeared with 2 small glasses and handed one to Arya like a magician, revealing a coin. You're both frowning at the same painting, she said. Try the cognac. It forgives. Arya let the burn anchor her. She felt the night choosing its direction. She felt the storm leaning harder on the windows. She felt the promise of a dinner in a house where cameras didn't watch the room that mattered. I'm going to disappear for 10 minutes, she said softly to Ethan. I'll count to 9, he said. She set the glass down and slipped into the slow channel of donors moving toward the next lot. At the corridor's mouth, she glanced back. He hadn't moved. He never did when she needed him to look like a landmark. The side hall was empty except for a guard adjusting his jacket, and a painting hung too high. She paused in the shadow and pulled her phone. thumb hovering over a number that would route through 3 countries to reach a villa with quiet floors. "Ava," she said when the line clicked. "Saint's name is changing every hour. I need eyes on the printing and hands near a gate that pretends it can count to 10. "Done," Ava said. "You sound warm." "Too much glass," Arya said. "Q1 too little air." "Then breathe outside," Eva said, and hung up because she loved her that way. Arya slid the phone away and returned to the noise. The auctioneer sold another apology disguised as a painting. The compact lieutenant left through a door that would lead to a call he didn't want to make. Nadia winked at a man who had never earned one and got him to bid against himself out of gratitude. Ethan approached as if drawn by gravity. "You have that look again," he said. "Which one?" "The one where you know more than you're saying." "I always do," she said. "2 nights," he said a third time. "Let me try." She let him see a sliver of concession because it would make him reckless in a way she could use. "Try," she said. "Not for me. For the file you want." "For both," he said. She touched his wrist once light, the way one touches a flame to learn its temperature. "Be careful what you want," she said. "You might have to keep it." "Is that a threat?" he asked. "It's a promise I'm not making," she said. The quartet changed key. Someone dropped a glass that didn't break. The storm tapped a polite warning on the tall windows. Arya felt the chapter turn. She smiled to herself and let the room believe it was for them. The dim alley behind the club smelled of old smoke and rain-soaked concrete. Streetlight bled through the mist in fractured lines, illuminating only slivers of the world. Elena's boots splashed through shallow puddles as she moved, her pulse steady despite the adrenaline that churned beneath her skin. She'd let him tail her on purpose. Her fingers brushed the silver chain around her neck, feeling the cool weight of the USB hidden inside its delicate pendant. Everything was there. The evidence, the names, the bank accounts, the network that had destroyed her father's life and left her an orphan. But Marcus wouldn't get it. Not yet. Not until she was done. From the mouth of the alley she heard his voice. "You're really bad at disappearing, you know that?" She turned slowly, her expression unreadable. "And you're really bad at catching me." He stepped into the faint light, coat collar up against the chill, eyes narrowing in that way he did when he was trying to read her. "Where are you going?" "You ask too many questions." "I'm a cop," he said. "It's my job." "No," she corrected, walking toward him until they were an arm's length apart. "Your job is to follow the law. Mine is to destroy the people who think they're above it." His gaze dipped briefly to the necklace. "That's what's on there? The whole case?" She smiled faintly. "That's what's on here for now." Marcus's jaw tightened. "You can't keep running these games, Elena. One wrong step and I'm dead?" She finished for him. "I've been dead since the night they shot my father. This is just unfinished business." His voice softened. "And after? What happens to you when it's done?" The question caught her off guard, a flicker of heat spreading under her ribs. She tilted her head, watching him with something almost like curiosity. "After? Maybe I'll disappear, or maybe—" She let the pause hang long enough to see him lean in, searching her eyes. "I'll take a vacation." He almost smiled, but there was worry in it. "You're playing with fire." "I am the fire." Before he could reply, a dark sedan rolled past the mouth of the alley, its tinted windows glinting under the streetlight. Elena's eyes sharpened. She knew those wheels, that low, heavy engine sound. One of Viktor Baranov's men. She'd been hunting him for weeks, an enforcer who'd helped launder the money that funded her parents' murder. Without warning, she moved. Marcus swore under his breath and followed, both of them melting into the shadows as the sedan slowed near a warehouse at the edge of the docks. Inside the building, the faint echo of footsteps mixed with the hum of refrigeration units. Elena moved like smoke, silent and deliberate, weaving through stacks of wooden crates. Marcus kept behind her, gun drawn, torn between stopping her and covering her. The enforcer stood near the back, flipping through a clipboard, his bald head catching the dim light. He was alone, no backup in sight. Perfect. Elena stepped out from behind the crates. Looking for me? The man turned, startled, then smirked. Little girl, you should have stayed hidden. Her answer was a blur of motion. 3 steps forward, a flash of steel in her hand, and the tip of her blade pressing against the pulse in his neck before he could reach for his weapon. Marcus was there a second later, gun aimed at the man. Elena. Not your fight, she murmured without looking at him. The enforcer sneered. You think killing me changes anything? There's 100 more just like me. No, she said, her voice steady. But you're the one on my list tonight. His laugh was cut short when she pushed the blade in just enough to draw blood. Why? Who paid you to kill them? She demanded. You already know. He rasped. Her grip tightened. Say it. He smiled through the pain, blood trickling down his collar. Viktor sends his regards. The last thread of control inside her snapped. She shoved him back against the wall, a swift twist of her wrist ending it. The body slid down in a lifeless heap. Marcus exhaled sharply, lowering his weapon. Jesus, Elena. She wiped the blade on the dead man's shirt, sliding it back into her coat. That's one less name on the list. You can't keep doing this, he said, stepping closer. You're burning every bridge you have left. She met his gaze, something fierce and dangerous sparking in her eyes. I'm not building bridges, Marcus. I'm building graves. They stood there in the dim light, breaths mingling, the tension between them thick enough to cut. He should have walked away. She should have pushed past him. Neither moved. Finally, she brushed past him toward the exit, her shoulder grazing his. Come on, detective, you can walk me out. Or arrest me. Your choice. He followed without answering, and outside the night air was sharp, smelling of sea salt and oil from the docks. Somewhere in the distance a ship's horn echoed. Elena glanced over her shoulder, catching Marcus watching her with that same maddening mix of suspicion and something softer. Someday, he said, you're going to have to decide if you're more interested in revenge or something else. She smiled faintly, stepping into the darkness. Someday isn't tonight. And just like that, she was gone again. One step ahead, as always. Morning leaked through the blinds in pale strips, the kind of light that made everything look like it had been wiped down and put back in the wrong place. The safe house smelled like coffee and gun oil and rain drying on a wool coat. Elena stared at the ceiling long enough to count each crack twice, then rolled onto her side and watched the doorway. A shadow crossed it. Boots. The soft clink of a mug on the counter. You going to pretend to sleep all day? And I was enjoying the quiet. There's a city out there that would argue with you. Only thing arguing with me is the kettle. You use the good beans, and you only buy good beans. She pushed the blanket back and sat up. Her ribs complained in a dull, lived-in way. The warehouse concrete still lived under her skin, the metallic smell of the dock still hanging in the back of her throat. She ran a hand through her hair and felt the pull of dried salt at the ends. Where did you put my coat? And chair by the door and the knife and under the coat. Smart. Practice. She swung her legs off the mattress and stood, bare feet finding the cold of the floor. Marcus stood at the tiny stove, shoulders filling the space like he owned the lease. He wore yesterday's shirt with the sleeves pushed up and a new bandage along his forearm where a crate had tried to take a bite. He didn't turn when she reached the counter. He didn't need to. You stayed. You were followed last night and I lost the tail. You lost the obvious one. She took the mug he slid toward her. The heat settled into her fingers like a promise she didn't trust. The first sip was bitter and clean. Your kettle whistles like a dying animal and you prefer silence. I prefer alarms that don't give away my location. He leaned against the counter, arms folded, eyes taking inventory like always. The look wasn't the usual cop's cataloging of threats. It was the private checking a soldier does before a march. He had learned the difference somewhere without telling her when. You sleeping at all? Enough to keep the knife straight. That a yes, that's a not your problem, and everything about you right now feels like my problem. That sounds personal. It is. She let the word sit between them and didn't rescue either of them from it. The city beyond the window coughed to life. Delivery truck brakes, a siren 2 neighborhoods away, someone yelling at a dog with the careful affection of people who live close to each other's walls. Elena took another sip and watched him watch her. You want to lecture me again? And no. Then what do you want? To be in front of you if someone opens that door? He'd left his holster on the table within reach but not on display. Her knife lay under the coat where he'd said it would, hilt perfectly aligned with the chair leg. The details mattered. He had learned that too. You cleaned my blade, you were bleeding and falling asleep in a chair with your boots still on. Didn't answer the compliment, you don't give those, and maybe you just haven't earned one. She took a long breath through her nose and let it out slow. The kind of breath Eva used to force on her in training when adrenaline wanted to write the next page. The pendant lay cold against her collarbone. The tiny drive inside lighter than its weight. Viktor's name lived there now. Not as evidence, but as gravity. He knows I'm here, he knew before the warehouse, and he made the camera glitch at the back entrance, and he made the guard look bored. He put a car at the corner with the dome light half out so it looked broken. He wanted me to think I was clever. You were clever, not enough. He set his mug down and moved closer to the window, eyes on the street, jaw tight. Rain licked the glass in thin lines and then stopped, undecided. You could run for a day. He's not chasing me, he's waiting. Same thing, and not when he's the kind of man who likes the theater of it. He kept you alive last night to make a point. He kept me alive last night because you were behind me. That get under your skin and all the way to the bone. A vibration rattled the edge of the table. Her phone skated a fraction. She reached it without looking away from him, thumbed the screen, read 2 lines, and let a new pulse spread low in her chest. What? Club tonight? Which one? The one under the bridge with the door that doesn't exist. You sure it's not a rumor? Name came from the woman who sold me the rumor last time it turned out true. Your gourmet florist, my bartender with a memory for faces and a hatred of men who tip with promises. He watched her carefully. The bridge club meant no cameras that weren't owned by someone who liked keeping memories private. It meant bodies too close to move cleanly and base heavy enough to cover a gunshot if you chose the right corner. It meant Viktor liked the insurance of a crowded room when he wanted control to look casual. You're not going alone, I wasn't planning to. Good. You're also not going as a cop, and I wasn't planning to. And you're not taking point, we can negotiate. No, we just did. He smiled without letting it reach his eyes. The line at the corner deepened anyway. He finished his coffee, rinsed the cup, set it upside down as if order could keep chaos at the door. What are we wearing? Sharp things under polite fabric, and that's your dress way of asking me to look good. It's my way of asking you to disappear until you need to be seen. I can do that, you can try. She set the mug down and leaned past him to reach the cupboard where she kept the second best knives. He didn't move out of her space. He didn't have to. The brush of his shoulder along hers was intentional and unintentional at once. She felt the heat and hated that she liked feeling anything at all. You're still bleeding, and it's nothing, hold still. She pulled a fresh strip of gauze, stepped in, and caught his forearm in her hand. His skin was warm, the muscle tight. The cut was clean but stubborn. She wrapped it, fingers moving with practiced efficiency, and kept her eyes on the work so she didn't have to see his. You have a terrible bedside manner. You're still upright. That your definition of success for today. He watched her mouth while she tied the knot. She knew because men always watched there when they wanted to say something they weren't going to say. He didn't say it. He flexed his hand, tested the wrap, and nodded once like they'd struck a deal. We should move. You want to bring your ghosts, or should I text mine? Call yours. I want ears inside the club that don't belong to Viktor. Eva owes me 3 favors. She owes you none. She owes me 2.5, and she hates owing anything. You like her because she reminds you of you. No. I like her because she reminds me of the part of me that used to sleep. He didn't answer that. He picked up the holster, slid the weapon home, and rotated his shoulder like the weight belonged there. She watched the motion with the professional interest of someone who knew too well what it meant to carry all day and forget until you didn't. You trust me yet? No. Getting closer and ask me when we're both alive at midnight. She made the call by the open window with the rain paused and the smell of wet stone drifting in. The line clicked and then hummed with the small sound of a place far away that had learned how to listen. You never call this early and I need a door. Which city? Mine. That narrows it down to 8 million doors and under the bridge. Send me something beautiful and I'll send you something useful. You like the dress or the knife? Surprise me. Bring an extra set of eyes who can count to 10 while walking away from a fight. Done. He'll want to stand too close to you and then tell him not to and he won't listen and then I won't either. Bring Nadia if she's bored and she is always bored and tell her there will be men worth lying to, there always are. The line clicked again and left only the street noise and the small rhythm of Marcus's breath behind her. You bringing the socialite and she brings herself, and that a problem. Only if she decides to collect you as an accessory. She doesn't collect men she can't buy. Good. Bad. Depends on your taste in chains. She moved to the bedroom, if you could call it that, a space mostly claimed by a wardrobe that looked like it hid expensive dresses and actually hid the parts of her life that weren't meant to be photographed. She pulled the black dress she could run in and the knife straps that didn't show under the cut. He stood in the doorway like a question mark that was pretending to be a period. You want to watch or help and I can hand you things. Zip. He did carefully, fingers not lingering where they might have. The line down her spine sparking where the zipper's teeth talked to skin. She stepped away before the moment thought it owned the room. You're quiet. Counting exits I haven't seen yet, and there are 3. You forgot the fire escape that only opens from the outside. I never forget those. He grinned in a way that softened everything without erasing the worry. It annoyed her how much nicer the room felt when he did it. She sat to buckle the ankle sheath and felt him watch her with an attention that belonged more to a partner than a cop. If things go wrong, they will. If things go very wrong. We improvise on the way out, and if there is no way out, we make one. He nodded once, the agreement sitting right where conviction lived. He pulled his jacket on, checked the line of it in the dusty mirror, and looked almost like a man going to dinner instead of a man walking toward a trap. You look like trouble, you look like the reason. Be honest, never. She grabbed the clutch that wasn't a clutch, the lipstick that wasn't lipstick, and the smile that had gotten her past more doors than any badge ever had. He held the door and let her go through first, which was both manners and tactics. On the landing, he stood a step above her for a second, and the difference in height made the conversation feel like a different conversation. She didn't like that either. You ready? No. Good. The city met them with air that tasted like rain and a street that pretended it wasn't watching. The driver waited with the kind of patience that only comes from long employment by people who made patience a job requirement. He glanced at them in the rear view and lifted his eyebrows a millimeter. You look like Sunday trouble. We aim higher. Where? Under the bridge, and I hate that bridge. We know. They moved through neighborhoods that wore their histories on brick and glass. Elena watched faces the way other people watched clouds, looking for storms, looking for shapes that meant more than they should. A man on a corner sold flowers that didn't smell like flowers. 2 teenagers argued about sneakers, and a third watched for police with the resigned focus of someone who had learned the schedule by heart. A woman carried a cake across a street like it was a new baby. You ever think about normal? Every time I see someone do it well, you could. Not with him alive and after. Don't make me invent a future to make you feel better. Not for me, for you. She looked at him, really looked, and found the worry there unhidden. It made something inside her ache in a way that had nothing to do with injuries. You want me to tell you I'll stop? I want you to tell me you'll live, that I can promise even if you don't stop. Even then. The driver took a right that curled them under the ribs of the bridge. The city above clattered. The city below hummed. Lights glowed along the river like cheap jewelry. The club's entrance was what doors look like when men like Viktor build them. Nothing and everything. A section of shadow, with a man standing near it who seemed to be doing nothing and was counting everything. Bad idea to show up early. We won't. Elena didn't move to the door. She walked past it and leaned against a pillar with her phone in her hand as if texting boredom into submission. Marcus slipped into the space beside her, posture casual, eyes not. He took her free hand without warning and lifted her knuckles to his mouth like a man playing a part he had always wanted to audition for. "What are you doing? Selling a story? To who?" "To the camera above your left shoulder that wants to believe we came here to be seen." The kiss didn't land, not really. It brushed skin and left heat behind and told the lens what it wanted to hear. His eyes never left hers. "You make it easy to lie and hard to breathe. Don't flatter me before the door opens." The shadow separated from shadow. The doorman's face belonged to no one's memory. He looked them up and down and found what he needed to see. "Enjoy the music, we will." They slipped into a stairwell that dripped bass and neon. Nadia found them on the second turn, lips red enough to start an argument, dress like liquid silver poured into a dare. She looped an arm through Elena's and gave Marcus the kind of smile women give men they might like if they had the time. "You took the invitation and you brought the show. I hate this place, everyone does." Nadia brushed a stray hair from Elena's shoulder as if they had been friends since childhood. Her perfume was expensive and defensive. "He looks worried." "He is. Good. You live longer when the men with you don't like dying." "Tell me Viktor is here. He is everywhere and nowhere, like all men who name boats after saints." "Any changes?" "He brought 2 new statues who think their jackets hide the fact they don't know the exits." "And the bartender?" "Keeps his mouth shut, but his eyes are full of math. Send him a drink." "And already did." And Nadia leaned in, voice dropping. "He will notice you. You are not built to be ignored. When he does, you smile like both of you know more than the other is willing to admit. That is your talent. That and knives. Stay close. I'm glued, and if I fall, I will catch you reluctantly and with perfect grace." Nadia drifted down the rest of the stairs like smoke rolling downhill. Marcus's hand touched Elena's lower back for 1 second. A guidance more than a claim. She didn't move away. You trust her to enjoy the chaos, yes, and to help if it keeps her entertained, that enough. It's more than most. They reached the doorway and the club opened like a throat. Dark and wet with sound. Lights cutting the room into moving slices. Bodies pressed and released in slow waves. The DJ perched in a metal nest above it all, head nodding like a priest with a beat. The bar glowed. The booths seemed to float. Elena's eyes adjusted and sorted it into maps. The exit near the bathrooms was half blocked by a half-broken sign. The side door behind the stage had a security camera with its tiny red eye covered by a piece of tape that wasn't tape. The VIP stairs had a new guard with the stance of a man who had not yet failed at his job. "He's here. Where up?" "I count 6. 2 more behind the curtain." The bass pounded through her ribs. The dress did what she had chosen it to do, frame and mislead. She let Marcus move half a step ahead, body angled to clear space. The 2 of them passing for a couple that wanted the same thing and had come here to find it. Eyes followed. That was fine. Eyes were part of the plan. "You ready?" "I was born ready." "No one is." Then I learned fast. He glanced down at her and the look wasn't professional. It was a man who had just remembered what heat felt like and was trying to file it under tactics. She didn't help him. "Don't look at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you want to know what my mouth tastes like and I already know. Do you?" "Like the word no when you don't mean it and don't test me." He smiled and this time it had teeth. They cut through a knot of dancers and found a pocket of space near the base of the VIP stairs. Nadia materialized again, a glass in each hand, placing one into Elena's palm with a touch that sent a message up Elena's arm and into her head. "He saw you. Since when?" "When you were a shadow at the door, and now." "He is deciding whether to be generous or cruel. He always chooses both. Then make him think generosity is expensive." Nadia was gone before the sentence finished. Marcus watched her disappear and then turned so his back faced the rail, giving Elena the view of the stairs. She could feel his shoulder a breath from her bare arm. It was almost nothing. It was everything. "You sure about this?" "No." "Good." The guard at the bottom of the stairs straightened. A man with a scar that looked like a map stepped down 2 steps and stopped where he could shadow the corner and scan the main floor at once. Elena didn't look at him. She looked past him. The curtain above moved a fraction and then stilled. Viktor liked theater, but he hated applause. He would watch and make other men clap for him. He would collect faces and turn them into leverage. He would smell blood like it was expensive cologne. Don't breathe too loud, and your idea of romance is terrible. You came here with me anyway. We have work. We have a problem. Where? Behind you. She didn't turn. The reflection in the metal column to her left was enough. Two men with the body language of new hires and the eyes of men promoted too quickly had begun to slide through the crowd in that way bad security thinks looks casual. Their angle converged on her like a compass that had lost the plot. Ready. Always. If I go high, I go low. On 3 and 1, 2. She set the glass on the rail and laced her fingers with his like a woman about to be led onto a dance floor. He pulled her close. Too close for strangers. Perfect for lovers. His mouth near her ear. Body angled to hide her hand as it slid toward the blade at her thigh. The bass swallowed their breath. She could feel his heartbeat through his shirt, steady and hard. She remembered the safe house and the way his hand had paused at the small of her back when he'd zipped the dress. She remembered deciding to live long enough to enjoy a future she hadn't planned. 3. The club swallowed them whole the moment they crossed the threshold. Heavy bass rattled through the floor, a deep pulse that seemed to match Elena's heartbeat. The air was thick with heat, perfume, and the faint metallic tang of danger. Marcus stayed at her side, his presence an anchor she didn't ask for but couldn't seem to shake. Every few steps, his hand brushed her lower back, a protective habit disguised as casual contact. She cut him a sharp glance. You remember the part where you promised not to get in my way? The corner of his mouth twitched. I also remember the part where I promised to keep you alive. They moved through the crowd close enough for the illusion of intimacy. A man in a leather jacket brushed against her hip. Marcus's hand settled possessively at her waist, steering her away without missing a step. The lighting shifted between blood red and cold blue, casting their faces into shadows. Elena scanned the upper balcony, her trained eyes flicking past strangers until she found him, Viktor Baranov, seated like a king in the VIP lounge. A glass of amber liquor glinted in his hand, his smile sharp and humorless as he spoke to the men around him. He's here, Elena murmured, leaning just enough so Marcus could hear over the pounding bass. He didn't follow her gaze. How many guards? At least 6 I can see. She adjusted her clutch, the one that hit a slim blade against her palm. More inside the lounge, probably. Marcus's fingers brushed hers briefly, a whisper of contact. Then we'll have to be fast. Elena started forward, weaving through dancers who moved like they had nowhere to be and all night to get there. The crowd was both cover and risk. A wrong step, and someone could pin her in place. She felt Marcus's gaze sweep the room, his body angling to shield her from anyone who looked too long. It should have irritated her. Instead, she found herself hyper-aware of the space between them, the way he matched her pace without hesitation. They reached the base of the stairs leading to the VIP lounge. A guard blocked the way, broad-shouldered and bored-looking until his eyes locked on her. You're not on the list. His voice was low, edged with challenge. Elena tilted her head, letting her lips curve into a slow, suggestive smile. Lists are for people who need permission. His mouth opened to reply, but Marcus stepped forward, close enough that his jacket brushed her arm. We're here for Baranov, he said flatly. The guard's expression hardened. Then you're in the wrong place. Before Elena could act, the club's lighting shifted again, this time to blinding white. Sirens blared, and with a metallic clang, the exits slammed shut. Trap, Marcus muttered. The guard reached for his weapon. Elena moved first, sliding the blade from her clutch in one smooth motion. The steel kissed the man's throat before his gun cleared the holster. Chaos erupted, people screamed, shoving toward the locked doors. Guards spilled from the upper lounge, their eyes scanning the crowd for her. Marcus grabbed her wrist, pulling her toward the wall as gunfire cracked through the air. Shouts mingled with the music, which kept playing like some sick soundtrack. Stay low, Marcus ordered, pressing her back into the shadows. I'm not hiding. Not asking you to, just don't get shot before I finish with them. She didn't have time to argue. A guard lunged at Marcus, and the former cop met him with a brutal elbow to the face, sending him sprawling. Elena ducked under an arm, aimed for her throat, twisting her blade into the attacker's side before shoving him away. They moved like they'd trained together for years. Silent coordination, watching each other's blind spots. Another guard closed in on Elena, his knife flashing in the strobe lights. She caught his wrist mid-swing, using his momentum to slam him into the railing. Blood dotted her cheek, hot against her skin. Marcus's voice came from just behind her. Left. She turned without hesitation, sinking her blade into the side of the man aiming for Marcus. The brief brush of their shoulders in the aftermath sent an unexpected rush through her, a reminder of how close they were to each other and to death. The air smelled of sweat, smoke, and iron. They pressed forward toward the lounge, cutting through anyone in their way. Marcus's hand found her waist again, guiding her past a collapsing table. She should have pulled away. Instead, she let him. At the top of the stairs, Viktor stood watching, untouched by the chaos. His smile was almost lazy. You really should have stayed hidden, Elena. His voice carried over the noise, dark and mocking. Her grip on the blade tightened. And missed the chance to finish this? But before she could move, more guards swarmed in from behind Viktor. The glass wall behind him shattered, and in the confusion, he stepped through and was gone. Damn it, Elena lunged, but Marcus caught her arm. Too many, we need to move. She shoved against him, fury sparking in her eyes. He's right there. And you'll die if you follow him now. His tone left no room for argument. The moment hung between them, charged with more than just adrenaline. Then she nodded, breath ragged. They turned for the service hallway, pushing through a narrow gap in the fight. Marcus took the lead this time, his hand gripping hers like he wouldn't let go. The hallway was dim and stifling, lined with crates and the smell of stale alcohol. Their footsteps echoed against concrete. Behind them, the chaos of the club faded to a distant roar. Marcus finally stopped, leaning against the wall. He was bleeding from a cut along his jaw, sweat glistening at his temple. Elena stepped closer without thinking, scanning the wound. Hold still. His lips curved faintly. You care now? Her fingers hovered near his face, not touching yet. I care about keeping my partner alive long enough to kill Viktor. But when she met his eyes, the lie in her words felt too thin to stand. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then Marcus leaned in close enough that she could feel the heat of his breath. Tell me you don't want this. Her chest tightened, she didn't answer, and in the quiet between them the unspoken truth settled. There was no denying it anymore. The hallway felt too small for the air they were breathing. Elena kept her palms braced on Marcus's chest, close enough to feel the thud of his pulse under sweat and heat. The cut along his jaw had already clotted. A thin line of red traced his neck and disappeared beneath his collar. Tell me you don't want this. Don't make me lie. His hand slid to her waist, fingers firm, possessive without trapping. The bass from the club bled through the walls like a heartbeat that wasn't theirs. She lifted her chin. He leaned in and stopped a breath away, waiting. She closed the distance. The kiss was a spark thrown onto gasoline. No softness, no caution, only relief and rage, and the relief of rage. She curled a fist in his jacket and dragged him closer. He pressed her to the cool cinder block, mouth hungry, careful only where she was hurt. The storm of it lasted a handful of seconds and an entire year. She broke first, breath ragged. We're not safe here. Back exit, then rooftops. Viktor's gone. For now. She swallowed the protest clawing up her throat and nodded. He took her hand and pulled her down the corridor. Their footsteps echoed, quick and measured. A door at the end of the hall wore a chain and a padlock that had already failed once. The metal remembered it. Marcus dug fingers under the loop, braced and tore. The link gave with a crack. He shoved the bar, and night kneed them in the lungs. Rain had begun without warning. the kind that arrived in a sheet and decided to stay. Alley steam rose around dumpsters and a crooked fire escape. Neon from the club's sign smeared across puddles in bleeding reds and blues. Nadia appeared from the dark silver dress turned mercury in the wet. You took your time. Viktor sealed the exits. He also reopened a door on the roof 2 minutes ago. Guess who used it? Already lost him. Of course you did. He enjoys being missed. How many outside? 2 cars, 4 statues. 1 driver who thinks headlights make him invisible. Your bartender. Counting cash with his eyes closed, he says good luck and to stop breaking glasses. Elena stepped close enough to Nadia to be heard over the rain. You see which way Viktor went. Across the roofline toward the river. He hates running but loves dramatics. If there's an escape tunnel, it breathes salt air. Marcus checked the mouth of the alley, then the roofline. We follow on foot and he leads us into a kill box. Then we don't follow. Elena looked to Nadia. You have wheels. A temperamental coupe that likes to be admired and a van that looks like a bad idea. The bad idea. Nadia flicked a key fob. A dark panel van at the far curb winked twice. Try not to bleed on the leather. They sprinted, splashing through reflected neon. Marcus hauled the side door open. Elena swung in, grabbed a handrail, and pulled him after her. Nadia slid behind the wheel, hair soaked and feral. Seatbelts if you like living. They jerked into traffic, tires squealing on slick asphalt. The city beyond the bridge was a honeycomb of wet light. Sirens yawned somewhere behind them and decided on someone else's problem. Elena wiped rain from her mouth with the back of her hand. He knew I'd be there. He knew you'd come anywhere your name could be spoken out loud. Nadia glanced at them in the mirror. He likes worship. Then he'll expect an altar. Build him one, darling, then set it on fire. Marcus pulled a small radio from an inside pocket and tuned it without looking. I can get unmarked units near the river in 5 minutes. And tell them what? Elena stared at him. Shots fired in a club that never existed. They'll say they heard thunder. Then save your favors. His gaze cut to her hand where it still trembled from the surge. He covered it with his palm. She didn't pull away. Next right, Elena pointed. Cut through the market streets and drop us 1 block north of Pier 12. Nadia swore softly. Pier 12 is where expensive mistakes go to sleep. Perfect. They wove into narrower roads past shuttered stalls with tarps snapping like flags. The van lurched, then straightened. The river showed itself in broken flashes between buildings, silver black and wide. Nadia killed the headlights 2 blocks early and rolled to a crawl. Walk from here. She braked in the shadow of a warehouse. The rain softened to a prickling mist, the kind that found skin no matter how you turned. Marcus opened the door and took the first step into the wet, scanning left and right while Elena slipped out and landed like quiet. Nadia leaned across the seat, eyes bright. Text me when you're not dead. Come inside if you get bored. I'm already bored. Go make a mess worth hearing about. The van slid away. The street swallowed its taillights. Elena and Marcus moved along a fence line where vines had bullied through chain links. The river air tasted metallic. A gull screamed like a hinge that hadn't seen oil in a decade. You think he'd risk the docks with this much noise? He thinks we can't help ourselves. Can we? Not if we pretend we're smarter than our anger. They pressed into shadow as 2 men in jackets moved across the pier, cigarettes burning like slow fuses. The guards spoke softly, the kind of softness that meant they didn't want to remember what they were saying. Elena tracked their rhythm, counted the distance from one stack of pallets to the next, measured the time between drags. Marcus watched her measure and matched his steps to hers. At the edge of the wharf, a low boat bobbed under the skin of the water. The name painted on the hull had been hastily scraped, the ghost of letters showing through like veins. Sane. Something. Elena felt the old cold recognition twist. She tasted Sunday night in the back of her throat, the same trick of names sliding across doors. Saints again. He's superstitious. He's practical. Saints sound like mercy on manifests. She palmed the smaller blade from her thigh and handed it to Marcus. He weighed it, tested the balance, and tucked it hilt up at his belt. 2 up ahead, he breathed. 3 if you count the smoker behind the forklift. The smoker will count himself last. On you. Always. They moved. The first guard didn't expect the sudden quiet of them. Elena closed his airway with her wrist and rode him down behind a stack of crates without a thud. Marcus flowed around the second, forearm-crushing windpipe, knee taking a leg, palm across a mouth that only sighed. The smoker looked up too late, eyes widening at a shape that wasn't right in the dark. Elena's hand covered his face and turned his world black in less than a breath. She eased him to the slick concrete and listened to the river answer nothing. They reached the edge of the pier. The boat rocked once and kissed the rubber fender. A figure moved near the wheelhouse. Quick, compact. Viktor. Not tall enough. The figure turned toward the docklight and the face resolved into the thin watcher from the VIP stairs. He checked his phone and pocketed it with the economy of someone trying to act like he wasn't thinking. A soft engine cough sounded from the far side of the hull. Elena peered over the rail and caught the plush blur of a second vessel sliding into position, low and silent, a private tender wearing shadow-like clothing. A man in a peaked cap raised a hand once. The watcher hesitated, then untied the mooring and hopped aboard. The tender pivoted and slipped toward the pilings. Wrong boat, Marcus whispered. False trail. Where's the real one? Already gone. They stood in the wet hush while the river chewed on the pier. Elena let anger rise, crest, and flatten into something clearer. He wants me chasing ghosts. Then don't. Harder than it sounds. Not for you. She turned and faced him in the broken light. Rain stuck in his eyebrows. The line along his jaw had reopened. A red thread chased the water to his collar. You're bleeding again. Occupational hazard. Hold still. Her fingers lifted to wipe the blood away, then lingered at his throat, where the pulse beat against the pad of her thumb. He watched her mouth just once, and caught her wrist lightly, not to stop her, only to know that it was there. Viktor knows you won't cut corners, he murmured. He's banking on your rules. I don't have rule. You have one. Which? Finish what you start. She let silence answer that. The river lapped. Somewhere down the block a door slammed and a dog barked twice like punctuation. She lowered her hand and forced herself to step back. We need eyes on the bridges, the heliports, the private garages within a mile. He'll switch vehicles twice and decide he's clever. I can request traffic cams. They'll show outages where he already bought blind spots. Then we use people. Nadia's bartender has cousins. Your driver hates that bridge. He always complains when he's right. A vibration buzzed in her clutch. She pulled the phone and glanced at the screen. One line from an international number that belonged to a villa where favors were kept in neat drawers. Door at Pier 14 opened 5 minutes ago, closed by no one. She looked at Marcus. He read the message upside down and nodded once. We won't make it on foot. We won't try. They ran back toward the market streets. The rain thickened into a sheet again, dissolving edges, scrubbing neon into watercolor. Nadia's van turned the corner as if summoned and braked so close the bumper kissed the curb. Tell me you found dessert. We found a locked door that forgot it locked. Get in, try not to ruin my carpet. They threw themselves into the van. Nadia punched the accelerator hard enough to press them back. Elena braced a hand on the dash and snapped the address. Nadia took a lane that wasn't a lane and made it one. Everyone is angry on this road. They were angry before we arrived. True, but now they have a reason. They burned 2 lights and a polite stop sign. The van fishtailed once and then settled. Pier 14 loomed through the rain, older and meaner than the others, built for work instead of pretty pictures. A metal door halfway down the pier dripped, no light underneath, no footprints that hadn't been half dissolved by weather. Marcus went first, gun low. Elena touched the latch and felt the tiniest give of warmth. the kind left by a palm minutes earlier. She looked at him. He nodded. She drew a breath that tasted like iron and opened the door. Inside, the dark had a texture. The room held the ghosts of boxes long moved and conversations that no one would admit they'd had. A wet line printed the floor, arcs where shoes had pivoted and gone. They followed it through a narrow corridor to a second door, this one with a keypad whose face glowed faintly. Code. Saint. Tried that. Try the wrong saint. She tapped a sequence she'd learned from watching men bless themselves with the wrong hand. The light flicked green. The lock sighed. The door swung to reveal a short tunnel sloping down to water kissed by a low-beam spill. A smaller tender idled below, sleek, expensive, and arrogant. The wake lapped the concrete. A wet footprint on the top step smeared toward the boat and then vanished. Elena's jaw tightened. He's already across. We can still see where he went. Eyes on the far side. She lifted her phone. Eva, wake your ghosts. I want rooftops near the cold storage and the old ferry slip, and the market roof that pretends not to exist. A pause. Done. Thank you. Send me a picture when you stop glowering. You sound like a thunderhead. She hung up and tucked the phone away. Marcus touched her shoulder, thumb moving once. A comfort he didn't dress up as tactics. You want to go after him tonight? I want to burn the river down. You won't. I won't. Then choose the hurt that hurts less. She let her breath go. Her bones felt heavy. The adrenaline that had carried her this far stepped aside and left the ache underneath. She looked at him and found no judgment there, only the flat, stubborn light of a man who had found a line he would not cross and another he would, for her. Come back to the safe house. Thought you hated being watched. I hate being alone more. He didn't disguise the way the words hit him. He nodded once. We regroup. We build a map that doesn't flatter him. We get inside his next room before he knows he has it. And when we do, you finish it. And you. I write the report in my head and never put it on paper. The corner of her mouth lifted. That's perjury. That's survival. They retraced to the van. Nadia drummed the wheel with manicured fingers. How dramatic are we feeling? Less fireworks, more arson. Finally a theme. She drove them back through streets that looked cleaner in rain because everything does. The city pressed nose and palms to the glass as they passed. By the time they climbed the safe house stairs, Elena's hair had dried in unruly waves, and Marcus's shirt clung to him in a way that would have been distracting if she didn't know distraction was the point. She unlocked the door and let the room breathe them in. Marcus stripped off the wet jacket and hung it with neat movements. Elena toed out of her heels and flexed numb toes, then busied her hands lining blades on the table and drying each with a clean cloth. Nadia wandered in like a cat who had decided the house was hers. I'll make tea while you pretend it helps. You can make whiskey if you like me. I like you complicated, tea it is. The kettle began its tired whine. Rain pressed the windows again. The city blurred to a watercolor that no longer needed details. Marcus laid a map on the table, paper stubborn, the kind that remembered folds. He circled the club, the piers, the tunnel, the neighborhoods where Viktor kept favors. Elena marked routes in pencil, then erased them and drew others. Nadia leaned over them with a mug in each hand and arched an eyebrow when their shoulders touched and neither moved away. You two are either going to save each other or burn beautifully. Either way, I'm buying front row seats. Save your money for bail. You never let me have nice things. Elena let the tea warm her throat. The heat lined her insides and smoothed the tremor she hadn't wanted them to see. She set the mug down and stared at the pendant lying against her skin, thumb rubbing the familiar edge. Viktor won tonight. He survived. That isn't winning. He escaped looking at me and saw you looking back. She lifted her gaze to Marcus. He held it without blinking. The room went quiet around the two of them in a way that had nothing to do with sound. This doesn't change, she whispered. I'm still finishing him. I know. If I get close and it's him or the law, you choose you. I choose my father. You choose the part of you that still hears him. He corrected softly, and I'll choose you. Her breath caught hard enough to hurt. She stepped around the table, stopping an inch from him. He didn't touch her first. He waited like a man who had learned patience because impatience had cost him too much. You keep offering a future I don't know how to hold. Then hold me. She slid both hands into his shirt and pulled him down to her. The kiss this time was slower, deeper, the kind that felt like ownership without cruelty. He wrapped his arms around her and lifted her just enough that her toes left the floor. Nadia made an appreciative, exasperated sound and turned her back with a theatrical sigh. Tell me before you make the house unfit for company. Elena's laugh broke against his mouth. She rested her forehead to his and breathed him in. You'll get me an invitation to his next room. I'll steal you one. You won't try to stop me. I'll try to keep you alive. And when it's done, we write a different report and take a vacation. I don't tan. You burn. Beautifully, I'm told. She smiled and let the smile stay. The storm outside shifted from hard to soft. The kettle clicked. Nadia muttered something about saints and sinners and poured more tea because it gave her hands something to do. Elena pulled away and picked up a pen. Tomorrow we start with his accountant. He trusts the books more than blood. I'll bring warrants that don't exist. I'll bring a dress that opens doors. Bring the knife. Always. They stood shoulder to shoulder over the map. Two shadows bent toward the same fire. The phone on the table buzzed once. A video. Grainy, short. Viktor on a rooftop, wind flattening his hair, city lights behind him like an unearned halo. He lifted a glass to the camera and smiled in a way that promised ruin. To the girl who survived the river. Elena's mouth tightened. To the man who won't. She forwarded the clip to a folder with a name only she understood. Marcus watched the muscle in her jaw settle, and then reach for calm. You with me? She asked, finally looking up. Until you tell me not to be. That's not going to happen. Good. She held out her hand, palm up, fingers open, an offer and a dare. He set his palm to hers. Their fingers threaded, simple as breathing. The pressure was steady. The promise didn't need words. Nadia raised her mug like a toast. To bad ideas with excellent execution. Tomorrow we hunt, Elena whispered. Tomorrow we hunt, Marcus echoed. Outside, the rain thinned to a silk curtain. The city breathed. Somewhere across it, Viktor leaned on a balcony and misread the weather. In the safe house, under the hum of tired lights and the map of a war they'd chosen, two people stood with hands joined and futures sharp in their throats, and they didn't let go.